Hook 'em, but it is not looking good. Now, we are going to go through, and of course, we will get to all the news that we have. Not only do we have news of Tua coming back, but at the same time, we actually get some trade rumors flowing where we are hearing that you may have Kupp on the way out. Teams are reaching out about Garrett Wilson. So it's a very interesting time to be in. But let's go ahead and let's pull these up. So the first thing that we'll have, obviously we covered all the trade updates that we had in the other video. Miles Sanders believed to be available on the trade market. The thing is anybody going to be trading for Miles Sanders? Would anybody be interested? Probably not. Understand why the Panthers want to get rid of the guy. I mean, you have Chuba Hubbard crushing, and at the same time, you're about to bring Jonathan Brooks in, but maybe this is just more so a warning that Miles Sanders is about to get cut. Doesn't matter. Shefty tweets out, multiple teams have inquired about trading for Garrett Wilson. The Jets do not plan on trading away Garrett Wilson and are listening to offers for Mike Williams. Would be extremely weird if the Jets were to trade Wilson. Would be really surprised if it happens. Rappaport comes out saying that multiple teams have inquired trading for Cooper Kupp. The Rams obviously are looking like they're competing for the division right now. Now, this is a team that has dealt with a ridiculous amount of injuries so far. Maybe coming out of the bye week, if they get a little bit healthier, if they start winning games, then you look back and just laugh at this report. But if the Rams lose a couple weeks here soon and then are completely out of it, you wouldn't be super surprised if Kupp, obviously an aging veteran receiver, ends up getting dealt to a team that needs that piece. Ramondre Stevenson expected to play. We had not covered that previously. But the other piece of news that we actually have here is Tua set to practice next week and hope he will be starting in week 8. Now, with that being said, obviously expectation here with Tua is that he elevates this Miami Dolphins offense back to being a top 10 offense in the NFL in total yards per game, as well as total points scored. So with that in mind, I want to remind y'all that Tyreek Hill is a top 3 receiver once he is back. Not only is Tyreek Hill a top 3 receiver, Devon Achane is a mid RB1. Not only is Achane a mid RB1, but also Jalen Waddle is a low-end wide receiver 1 to high-end wide receiver 2, and somebody that you will be starting every single week. So make sure that if you have a league mate that's not respecting the Miami Dolphins players right now, you go out, you send a low ball offer, because especially next week when Tua is actually at practice and he's actually training towards being good to go, your probability of trading for him will be absolutely 0. Now, let's go ahead and let's pull up the questions that we have over on flockfantasy.com. Obviously, if y'all ever have any questions, you can always send them on flockfantasy.com. Just go over to the sites, hit the button in the top right corner. That button in the top right corner that says expert advice will take you here where you can ask a team review, trade question, start set question, super message. I'll be live streaming all Sunday morning to make sure that I get to any questions that you send in. Of course, you don't even have to be in the stream, and you're going to get your answers sent to you through the site with a custom link of me answering your question in that live stream. So you can ask a question at any time you want through flockfantasy.com. Now, if you did want that full-blown roster review, I'd highly recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have over there on Underdog Fantasy. Or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tomorrow night. And if you wanted to pair that Aaron Rodgers pickup with something, I would personally be looking at the Brandon Ayuk lower than 61.5 receiving yards. David Montgomery to go higher than 61.5 total yards. And yeah, just make sure if you use code FLOCK, you set up an account on flockfantasy.com as well. That way I know who to credit. With the same email address as your Underdog Fantasy account. That way I know who to credit with that free team review voucher. But let's move this over and let's start this going for Tall Degen says, I'm a 2-4 team. Should I trade away Nico? Besides Cup, the only other offer I got was Mike Evans. 100%. If you are 2-4 and we need wins right this second, you go ahead, you sell Nico Collins for Cooper Kupp. We don't have clarity if Kupp is going to be 100% playing, but at the end of the day, this is still a situation in which, at the very worst, you're getting him back in week 8. Whereas with Nico Collins, he's going to be missing another 3 weeks from here at the very minimum. And Kupp's through the bye as well. And 2-4, we can't be thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. We have to be trying to get to the dance before you can look for the upside there. Now let's move this over to our next question. It's coming out from 20. Says, stuck at wide receiver 2 and a flex with Lamb on bye and the Evans injury. Could pick up Shakir to stack with Allen. Not super interested to do that, to be honest with you, with Amari coming in. Obviously, no CeeDee Lamb. Tougher situation, but Mike Evans completely cleared, good to go, at least based off what reports came out later today. And then going down to the flex spot, if Brian Robinson misses, I want to be playing Austin Eckler. If it looks like Brian Robinson's going to play, I want to go ahead and play Christian Kirk. So we'll come down to what you have with the Brian Robinson injury. Now moving this over to our next question that's coming out from Tompies. It's a start-sit question. Here we have Baker Mayfield in at quarterback. Running back, we have James Conner, Jahmyr Gibbs. The option we would want to pivot to if we were to change to somebody would be Chase Brown. But we are staying with this running back room. Maybe we can go through and maybe we can go with Chase Brown in the flex. And yeah, in one flex spot, we have Josh Jacobs. Really, we're choosing between Chase Brown, Kareem Hunt, Jamison Williams. I think that possibly you have a similar expected opportunity share between Chase Brown and Kareem Hunt. But personally, I expect that Chase Brown's going to be the more efficient running back at this point of his NFL career. And at the same time, you do have a better matchup for Brown instead of Hunt. So we'll go with Chase Brown. Brutal matchup for Jamison Williams going up against the Vikings. Manning. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. We need Arch in here. We need Arch. Let's go. Come on. But moving this over to our next question. This is one of those free Underdog team reviews. This is Royal Captain, the Bench Warmers Bench. Here, it looks like, it looks like we are at the bottom of this league analyzer. Not a good spot to be in. It is an 8-team league in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. This should mean the options on the waiver wire are phenomenal, while at the same time, this should mean that any 2-for-1 deal we can make to get an improvement inside the starting lineup, we want to go ahead and we want to sell the depth for that top end stud. Now, going over to what we have at quarterback, we are currently rolling with Jordan Love, CJ Stroud. For this quarterback room in a 12-team league, I'd be super excited about it. In an 8-team league, not so much. 8-team league, I think you're maybe a little bit screwed here, to be honest. Don't have rushing upside between either one of these QBs. So, I mean, it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league as well, where the wide receiver depth's not going to be super important. So if we could go ahead and upgrade quarterback, I really would like to do so, but it's easier said than done, of course. Now, going over to what we have at running back, we're currently sitting with J.K. Dobbins, Chuba Hubbard, Bucky Irving, Zach Moss. Long-term, are we looking at any of these running backs being a top 8 option? No. So ultimately, we don't have an RB1 here. We may not even have an RB2 long-term when you end up getting back Jonathan Brooks. Chuba Hubbard may not be a top 16 RB at that point. So running back is a complete debacle. It's a disaster. It's a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex as well. So we can't really save it with wide receiver depth. Going over to wide receiver, we have Diggs, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. So we do have plenty of names at wide receiver. But at the same time, it's not like you have that top end option that we're super excited about, at least not in the short term. Obviously, we do in the long term when Nico Collins comes back in. But overwhelmingly, I think what we can say with this team is this is a team that is lacking talent across the board. Really, for an 8-team league, the only spot in which I think that you are above average here, or we can be really excited about, is tight ends with Brock Bowers. So I would go ahead, and what I would do is the first second, right now, right this second, you go ahead and you make a couple waiver wire pivots where we are going to be dropping Isaiah Likely. There's no world in which we're ever playing Likely over Brock Bowers. If you needed to go through and if you needed to pivot to a different tight end during Brock Bowers' bye week or with a Brock Bowers injury, there should be viable options off the waiver wire. Going over to the waiver wire, you could always pick up Cole Kmet, David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson. So go ahead and drop Cole Kmet drop Isaiah Likely right this second. Other guys that probably aren't worth the spot specifically in an 8-team league. Juju Smith-Schuster, Romeo Doubs, I'd be happy to just send them straight to the waiver wire. And that should open up 3 waiver wire slots for us. With those 3, I don't think we just stick at wide receiver. I think we actually pick up a running back here as well. I think that we pick up Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle for completely free wide receivers that could see a massive bump in value in the long term once you end up with their quarterbacks back in their respective offenses. And then with that third open spot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick up Rachaad White with the uncertainty of what you have in this Tampa backfield, hopefully giving us a little bit of upside for free. Definitely, I think you have more upside with Rachaad White than Isaiah Likely at this point. And then if you're able to get those additions there with the wide receiver pieces at the very bottom end, such as Olave and Waddle, what I would really want to do is I would want to, at that point, see if we can trade away one of these exciting receivers that we have, somebody like Zay Flowers. And if you can take Zay Flowers and Chuba Hubbard and go get a long-term running back that you're super excited about, or maybe trade away Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison in an 8-team league. And Jordan Love, I apologize. In an 8-team league and see if we can go get Lamar, Daniels, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I think that'd be really exciting as well if it's a 4-point passing touchdown format where we're trying to optimize for the rushing quarterbacks. I think that those are the moves that I'd make. Obviously, it starts with the pivots on waivers. But then we could also look to potentially make that 2-for-1 deal where it makes sense. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock and taking advantage of that Underdog promo. I really hope I was able to help you out in some way. I know we're 3-3, but honestly, I think we're probably the worst team in the league with this being an 8-team format, even though I'd love this team in a 12-teamer, but just obviously in an 8-team league, the bar is just so much higher. Now, let's move this over to our next question from Bank. It says, I don't know if I should start Tank over Chase. Well, let's go ahead and let's figure this out. Quarterback, we are going to be rolling with Joe Burrow. Wide receiver, I think that St. Brown in a tough matchup even and Cooper Kupp will be must-start options, assuming that Kupp is good to go. We're going to go ahead. We will be taking Jaden Reed for the flex. For tight ends, we are going with K. Dotton. So effectively, we need to think about what we could potentially do. So you're asking, do we pivot from Tank Bigsby? I apologize, from Chase Brown to Tank Bigsby. There's a 0% chance I would do that unless Travis Etienne was ruled out. Last that I saw, I don't think we had an update yet with Etienne. Last I saw, Jake Funk elevated off the practice squad for Jacksonville, making it less likely Travis Etienne plays this week. If you have no ETN, I think you can consider Tank Bigsby. But the thing is with Tank Bigsby, you have one target all season. You're not going to get any receiving usage whatsoever. Chase Brown's in a much better offense. Now, the Jags are favored by like 6 points, so definitely can go ahead and pivot over to Tank if you want, but only in the instance that Travis Etienne gets ruled out. Only if Etienne is ruled out. Now, let's move this over to Adam's question. This is a start sit. Says, don't let me down here, Mason. 1-5. We need this win. Bring it home. Hook 'em, Horns. Hook 'em. Looks like your 1-5 fantasy team may have more hopes than our Texas Longhorns at this point. But Anyway, you're going to go Cousins. Right now, sportsbooks are projecting that the Atlanta Falcons are the second highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Going over to what we have at running back, David Montgomery, tough matchup. It's still going to be a must-start player. Wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, phenomenal matchup. Should be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week, according to sportsbooks. Lamb on bye. We're going to go with Jordan Addison in a good spot against a Lions team where they're going to have to throw the ball. Tight end, we will go with Kyle Pitts into what should be a very high-scoring game environment. And going down to what you have in the flex, this is where things get difficult. If Travis Etienne plays, then at that point, I'm not super excited about Bigsby or Etienne, as it'll be a three-man running back by committee. If Etienne is out, then I think you go ahead and you play Tank Bigsby. If Etienne plays, however, I think we're going to go with Josh Downs, even with Anthony Richardson starting, and obviously it being a tougher situation in general to project passing volume to be here. But again, definitely want to reiterate, we are waiting and trying to get that update with a Mr. Travis Etienne. Now, real quick, if you have not done so already, ladies and gentlemen, can you please go down there, drop a like on this live stream for us. We have live streamed every single day for years and years and years. I haven't missed a single day during the season in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, now 2024. It's like our 5th year in a row without missing a day during the football year for y'all. So if y'all aren't going to hit a like button for that, what are you dropping a like for? But let's move this over to our next question. This next one coming out from LP Cabrera. This is a start-sit question. I believe we got a roster review from them yesterday. It's a super flex league. We're choosing between Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. I actually go with Lawrence against the Pats here. The Jags have an implied team total of 24 points. I think sportsbooks are really giving the credit for the Jags offense that they get the extra time to acclimate in London, whereas you just simply don't hear if you're looking at the Pats. Going over to wide receiver, no Olave, no Puka, where it's really between JSN, Addison, Worthy. Addison gets a little bit of a bump now that we know that you have no TJ Hawkinson. Obviously, it's a great matchup as well. I think we still probably go ahead and take Jackson Smith and Jigba, though. The over-under on the Seattle game is actually 50.5 points, so it should be a very high-scoring contest. So we'll go ahead and we'll put JSN here at wide receiver 2. And if anything happens, Addison would be my second choice. But Chief Reefer, always happy to see us, says, ETN on waivers. Do we drop Chandler, Algier, Corum, or Allen to pick him up? I'm assuming this is Keenan Allen, correct? I would go ahead and I would drop Ty Chandler, because the thing with Ty Chandler is Aaron Jones now good to go. Not only is Aaron Jones good to go, but at the same time, they traded for Akers, so even if Jones were to get injured again, Ty Chandler's probably in a running back by committee. So I would go ahead and I most likely would look to drop Chandler, pick up ETN for sure, though. Now, T. Sanchez coming out with a start-sit question. Here, quarterback, we have Drake May. I honestly would love to pick up Geno or Kirk Cousins if they're on your waiver wire and play them over Drake May. I know Danny in the Flock League this week is playing Drake May over Kirk Cousins because it's a good matchup against Jacksonville. But in a London game, I think you're losing your mind if you're doing that, to be honest. Going down to what you have in the flex. Here, this is a league where we have a bunch of options. I don't want to go like all in and say like, oh my gosh, you need to start Amari Cooper this week. It's so exciting, much better offense, yada, yada, yada. But specifically, if you're going to be comparing him to some of these other options, like here, I guess our other player to pivot to would be Jordan Addison. I don't know. The passing volume could be comparable in Buffalo. I think Amari has the chance to be the wide receiver one his first week in, even if he hasn't had a ton of time to acclimate to this offense, where I don't see any possibility that Jordan Addison is the top wide receiver in Minnesota. And like I said, I think the passing volume could be comparable between the two offenses. So let's move this over to our next question. It's coming out from Snubs. Says, need help with the flex. Might also need to play either Singletary or Tracy at RB if Jones doesn't go. Jones will be good to go. Don't worry about that. If you had to go with Singletary or Tracy, I'd go Singletary. But for the flex spots, we're going to go ahead, and this is brutal. I personally don't want to play either of the Giants' backs if we can avoid it. They're telling us that Singletary is going to be good to go, but even with that, they're saying that Tracy's going to have an expanded role in comparison to what you're used to. I think you have to go Christian Kirk with an implied team total of 24 points here. And then for the last spot between Waddle and Singletary, can we check out the Underdog projections? I had Singletary ranked ahead of Waddle this week. Singletary or higher, lower, 53.5 yards, higher, lower, 8.25 fantasy points. Waddle, your higher, lower, 42.5 yards, higher, lower, 8.15 fantasy points. Non-PPR, half PPR format, I think I go Singletary. Full PPR league, we go Waddle, and we hope we get a big play. The sportsbooks currently do have the Dolphins projected outscore 20.5 points, which obviously is a much higher than what they have done with no Tua, but typically sportsbooks I don't know. Typically, sportsbooks know more than I do. Typically, I think sportsbooks know more than you do. Typically, I think sportsbooks probably have more information at their disposal than everybody here. I think I can kind of confidently say that as well. Now, going over to our next question from Jack says, we have Barkley, Taylor, Jacobs. After the trade, we have Kupp, Collins, Moore, half PPR, single, 2 receivers, single flex. We are 5-1. 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, 5-1. We easily go Breece Hall. Not even close. I mean, if we're looking at Breece here, 3 down running back, insane usage with this new coaching staff, where they effectively just completely remove Braylon Allen from this offense. So yeah, I think this is kind of an easy spot for you to just go ahead and for you to just jam in Breece. Now, I love Bijan. Love the team name coming out with this start set. Here, running back, we have Breece, Bijan. Absolutely nuts. We need help at wide receiver and the flex. Here we have Tyreek, Ayuk, and Amari to choose from. Obviously, we're not starting Keon Coleman, and we don't have Puka Nacua this week. When Tua is officially back next week, obviously, this won't be nearly as difficult. I think we do probably just go ahead and play Tyreek as well as Ayuk. However, like with Amari, I think you can afford to be a little bit hesitant and see at least what he's like his first week in this offense. Get the expanded role going into week 8. Because there is an outside chance that Amari Cooper only plays 40-50% of the snaps in this game. Going through and looking at the underdog picks right now, Amari Cooper is only higher, lower, 36.5 receiving yards. Whereas you have like Ayuk, higher, lower, 61.5. So yeah, you probably don't want to be going with Amari this week if you can avoid it. Now, Junior coming out with a start set question. Here, quarterback, we're looking at Baker versus Kyler. Now that you officially have Mike Evans good to go, and Kyler Murray is in a tough matchup, I think we're probably going to go ahead. We are going to take Baker Mayfield. Going down to what you have in the flex, you are looking at Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper, Jalen Waddle as pretty much your main choices. I think Hunt's the easy play here. I'm not going Tracy with Devin Singletary back in. I don't want a committee back in this Giants offense. Bucky Irving would be the play if you add no Rachaad White, but if Rachaad White plays, then at that point, I'm not super excited about it. Obviously, we have no Dowdle. We have no Puka Nacua. Can y'all spam the chat? Would you play Amari Cooper or Jalen Waddle this week? Please spam the chat. Would you go with Amari or Waddle? Again, please play Bucky if Rachaad White misses, but kind of assuming Rachaad White plays at this point. We got Amari, Waddle, Amari, Waddle, Amari, Waddle. Amari. Looks like everybody's in on Amari, but going back to what I was saying previously, I don't think you need to be super excited to get Amari in this week. Whereas you go ahead and you look at Waddle. Waddle even has a higher lower receiving yard mark at 42.5, whereas Amari's currently at 36.5. So again, there is the uncertainty that the spread's 8.5 points on this game. They might not need Amari Cooper. It's not like Amari has the chemistry with Josh Allen built in the way that Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers do. So there's a small possibility that you just don't get Amari with an 80% snap share in this game. I had Amari ranked ahead of Waddle in my flex rankings this week. We probably stand by it, but I do want to be on record and say that it's pretty close. Now, Vincent coming out with a start-sit question. Quarterback, we have Allen. Running back, Hunt, Connor. Wide receiver, Wandale. I'd love to get rid of Wandale here if we can. Going down to the flex spots, we have no Keenan Allen this week. Seems like Ladd McConkey will be good to go. If Ladd does play, obviously we're going to have to monitor the practice report. If we have any news later tonight or tomorrow morning. Honestly, they have been good about getting us news before the main slate of games on Sunday. Issue is Kirk, I think, would be our backup option. And obviously Kirk plays in the London game, so just extremely early here. I think plan A is Ladd and Sermon. Plan B, if it seems like Ladd's not going to be good to go, you pivot over to Christian Kirk. Again, like we said, this should be a better spot offensively for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're looking at the projections that you have, sportsbooks are giving them a lot of credit, probably because they've been able to actually stay in London, where now the Patriots are the ones having to adjust. But hi, Mason, coming out with a start-sit question. Here, wide receiver, we are going to go ahead and we are going to be putting in George Pickens with the expectations that maybe we actually get a little more passing volume with Russell Wilson under center here. Going over to tight end, we're going to go with Sam Laporta. Laporta, Kraft, pretty close for us in such a bad matchup for Laporta, however. And then over in the flex, we are just going to go ahead. We will play Kareem Hunt. Very interested to see what the workload looks like for Kareem Hunt this week. Obviously, if he comes out and if you see 20-plus opportunities, then Hunt will be much higher in our rankings next week than he is right now. Now, Green Goblin's coming out with a massive donut. Says 12-team full BBR. Pick 3 to start for 2 wide receivers in a flex. Kupp, Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison, Tank Dell, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So assuming that Kupp plays, you have to play Kupp. We're going to be going with Kupp, Harrison, and honestly, Devontae Adams. Now, I understand that, yes, with Tank Dell and Juju, they had very strong performances last week. And then in the case of Juju, 2 weeks ago. But still, you are looking at a very small sample. I know that Dell's more exciting now that you have no Nico Collins. We've already seen a bunch of usable weeks from Harrison. Harrison's already cleared, good to go. Kupp, we had 21 targets the last full healthy game that he played. DK Metcalf's currently a top 5 receiver in the NFL in targets. Devontae Adams averaging 9 targets a game before he got injured. So I think the other guys are more guarantees, where Juju and Dell I'm viewing more as just flex fill-ins. Now, Kendrick Lamar Jackson coming out says, not sure to run it running back 2. Mostert, Sermon, Tracy, or Madison. Thanks, G. Thank you, my friend. Here, running back, I'm going to be going with Trey Sermon. Not excited about it at all. Obviously, get the 18 carries last week, but super inefficient with them. And at the same time, if you are looking at Trey Sermon, this is a running back in which you probably shouldn't expect a ton of checkdowns coming out of the backfield with Anthony Richardson. A-Rich could steal a rushing touchdown or two here as well. So not super excited about it. And then going down to the flex. Yeah, we're definitely playing Dell here over Judy. So I think we go with Sermon with not high hopes, but I mean, maybe you could pivot to Madison if you were to have no Zamir White. But Mr. Filthy Wubs, happy to see you again. This is a start-sit question here, where for the flex, we are looking at Chase Brown, Zach Moss, Mooney, Pittman, Debo, and Worthy. So Debo does have a tough matchup. You do have Ricky Pearsall coming in, but at the same time, you have no Juwan Jennings. Not only do you have no Juwan Jennings, but you also have no McCaffrey, which has led to Debo getting some of these artificial touches around the line of scrimmage at a higher rate in comparison to what we saw last year. So I think I'm going to go ahead. I will take Debo Samuel here in that second flex spot. But let me pivot over and answer some of the free questions that we have in the chat. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I'll be happy to try to get to as many as we possibly can. And also, we are 2 people away from having 1,000 people in this live stream. So hit that like button if you have not done so already, please. But Austin says Trey Sermon's horrible. I 100% agree with you. I think Trey Sermon's not a good running back. I don't think anybody would go out on a limb and say that Sermon is a great back. Seal says trade away Najee for Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams, I think, is actually a very effective real-life receiver. The issue that you have with Jamison Williams, or at least the issue that I have with Jamison Williams, you go through the last 3 games he's played, he's averaging 3 targets a game. He hasn't proven to be much more than the vertical field stretcher that clears out space for the rushing attack and the other options across the line of scrimmage here that are going to grab a ton of that target volume underneath, while Jamison Williams stretches the field, keeps the safety back, keeps the boxes light for this rushing attack. And again, I do want to reiterate that you should be really excited about Jamison if you're like a Lions fan and what he's able to do for the offense and boosting its efficiency. But specifically for like fantasy football purposes, it's not like you're getting the consistent target volume here with Jamison. But on the other end, I don't want to sit here and act like Najee is the most exciting player in the world. And if you're looking at Najee Harris, he's had the opportunity. Obviously, he's been very inefficient with the opportunity. But the issue that you may have on top of this is Jalen Warren's now back and healthy. So it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if all of a sudden we actually see a little bit less Najee Harris, especially with how bad he's been. I mean, it's not like you can sit here and make an argument that Najee's been a good running back this season. Now, let's move this over to our next question. Kiss the Ring says, Arch Manning is about to make history and start the Arch Manning legacy tonight. If somehow he manages to turn this around, it would be a legacy game. It would be. My hope for the Texas Longhorns are always very low. I'm a very bad Texas Longhorns fan. I'm trying to be better. Obviously, I went to the University of Texas, so I should try to be the best fan I can be. But I'm always a pessimistic Longhorns fan. I'm hoping that he could turn it around, but it looks like we're just getting blown out. Zevo says Ewers is in. Was Ewers back in? I have it on the second monitor. I haven't seen that yet. LLJK says, should I be interested in trading away a running back in Dynasty if I have Brees, Bijan, HM, Pacheco? If so, who? Probably not. Not if you're a contender. If you're a rebuilding team, then yeah, in general, we are looking to pivot off of running backs for wide receivers. Okay. It does look like Manning is back on the bench and Ewers is back in. Parzival says, who would be acceptable in return if we trade away David Montgomery? If you're pivoting away from Montgomery, we're looking for the Bijan Breece tier of running back. If it's a full PBR format, I would love to see if we could go ahead and send, say, Montgomery and a depth receiver like Darnell Mooney and see if we can pivot over to Breece Hall. Okay. Now let's move this back over. And top 5 says pick 2, Juju, Bigsby, or Addison in a full PPR format. We would go ahead and we would go with Juju and Addison here if ETN plays. If you have no ETN, you could potentially consider pivoting off of Juju for Bigsby. But Matt says, how do you ask a question? If you wanted to get a guaranteed answer over there on flockfantasy.com in the live stream we're doing every single night, you can go through the link in the chat that says ask a question here, or you can just go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the button in the top right corner that says expert advice. There you can get a team review, trade question, start sit question, super message, whatever you're wanting. Again, if you wanted that team review, I would highly recommend going ahead and taking advantage of the offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just make sure that you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy and make sure you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy and set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on flockfantasy.com. That way I can accredit you with that free team review voucher. But anyway, moving this over to our next question here. This is coming out from, I believe, Sirach Amat. Says 3-3, full PBR, 3 receiver, 2 flex. Wide receiver depth matters a ton. Trying to win and make the receivers better. Should I move on from Ayuk? In this format, I want to hold on to Brandon Ayuk. 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. I think that's where you get rid of Ayuk. But here, you can go through and you can I think in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, we can say it's going to be very difficult for us to ever really get Ayuk in with confidence. But in a league where you can start 5 receivers, you can. Now, looking at this, Wandale to Pacheco, give me Pacheco with the hope he comes back in later. Montgomery to Devonta Smith. I think you are just downgrading too much here. I like the idea of pivoting off of David Montgomery to a wide receiver in a full PPR league where we can start 5 receivers weekly. I just think you need to be looking at a higher tier player than what you have with somebody like Devonta Smith. Now, Bless coming out with a start sit question says, hey, Mason, longtime viewer. I'm 3-3, having a hard time deciding on who to start this week. So quarterback, we are going to go ahead. We are going to be taking Burrow. Running back, we are going to be going with the combo of Derrick Henry and do you only need 1 RB? I guess so. I guess we only need 1 running back, 1 receiver, and 3 flexes. Wide receiver, you go with St. Brown, even in a tough matchup. Tight end, we're going to go ahead and take Evan Ingram. And then for the 3 flex spots, if they are good to go, plan A will be Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson, and Deebo Samuel. The backup option, if either Walker or Brian Robinson would be out, then you pivot over to J.K. Dobbins. But the good thing about this is that Dobbins plays late Monday nights. So by the time that we have to make this decision, you will have all the injury information on our other options. So like I said, plan A will be Kenneth Walker and Brian Robinson, and the backup option is Dobbins. Now, scenarios coming out with a start-sit question. Quarterback, we have Darnold. Our other options, Fields. I think maybe you can cut Fields at this point. Running back, we have Henry, Pollard, receiver, London. Not so. Team is a phenomenal roster. So Ramondre Stevenson is going to be good to go this week. I have Ramondre Stevenson in the Flock League. I was planning on benching him. And now that Ramondre is good to go, I am going to pick up Ricky Pearsall, and I'm going to be dropping. Can y'all let me know in the live chat real quick? Who would y'all rather pick up? Would y'all rather have Ricky Pearsall, or would y'all rather have Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the last spot on your bench? Ricky Pearsall or Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the last spot on your bench. Who are you going with? Please let me know. Okay. Ricky. Looks like everybody is Ricky Pearsall. That's where I'm at too. Especially since in my league, I can start up to 4 receivers weekly. So I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to drop Antonio Gibson. Now that Ramondre's back, Gibson really is not doing much for us here. And if I were to make a pivot and actually put Ramondre Stevenson into my lineup, Hook'em Horns, we scored. Fine, we're on the board. I would be looking at Ramondre Stevenson over Jalen Waddle. Would y'all play Ramondre Stevenson or Jalen Waddle this week? Let me see if Underdog is a pick'em of Ramondre out. Obviously, it's a pretty good matchup for Ramondre Stevenson. But he was already in a committee, and at the same time, you are dealing with one of the worst offenses in the league. Looks like Waddle, Stevenson. Everybody's on Stevenson. If you look at the Underdog picks this week, with Ramondre Stevenson, your higher lower 8.95 fantasy points in a half PPR format. Where Waddle, your higher lower 8.15. And this is a half PPR. So in a full PPR league, the projections with these guys would be about the same. I'm really surprised that y'all are that high on Stevenson. I'll listen to you. Especially knowing that I will want to have some fun and I'll want to have something to root for in the Monday game. So I'll plan on Ramondre Stevenson there at RB. Okay. But looking at the flex spot again, I know we went on a massive tangent, but it's because I saw Ramondre Stevenson here. I wish we could have got a time machine, go back and start Javonte Williams. But honestly, I think you go ahead and you play Brandon Ayuk. With Ramondre, I'm very hesitant for the reasons that we just mentioned. Bad offense, committee back, dealing with the foot injury. I know it's a good matchup, but it's also a London game. I think that there is a lot of uncertainty there. So we'll go ahead and we will take Ramondre. And the Jags are favored like 6 points in this game. I know the Jags have been horrible, but sportsbooks are saying that's going to be a noticeable difference with the Jags since they've been there for so long. They've acclimated to London. Go Ute says 2 point per reception. Running backs looking appealing over receivers, but I don't know what to do. Trey Sermon with Taylor out. If it is a 2 point per reception league, I'm telling you, no, we're not going to go Trey Sermon. You have no receiving usage at all. I would go Bucky Irving where we will have something as a receiver. And then obviously we're going to play Breece Hall here as well. And then going over to tight end, we are going to go with Kyle Pitts, even with Amari Cooper not playing in Cleveland, which obviously that does give a slight bump up to Njoku. And then going down to what you have with the flex spots here, with it being a league where you were getting 2 points per reception. Let's say Sermon has 80 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, but 0 receptions. Waddle has 4 receptions for 40 receiving yards. It's about the same amount of points in this league. So honestly, I think in this league, if it's 2 points per reception, you kind of have to go through and you have to play the receivers. I think I'm going to be putting in Waddle. I can't go Ridley. I think we go Waddle and Moss, but if it's a 2 point per reception league, I just can't stress enough how I have no interest in Sermon, whereas quarterback's not going to check the ball down. And on top of that, of course, Sermon had 0 targets last week as well. They all went to Goodson. Now, Go Utes Tommy coming out again says 2 receiver, single flex, RB2. Pick one between Sermon, Chubb, or Irving. Wide receiver, Hill, London, Smith, Debo. We got to pick 3. Okay, let's go ahead and let's look at this. So, looks like everything's just typed out. We didn't add the players to the tool. Okay. So, between Bucky, Chubb, and Trey Sermon, I think I go ahead and honestly, I think I'm going to just play Bucky Irving if you have no Rachaad White. But if Rachaad White does play, then at that point it's a lot tougher. Obviously, this is a Tampa game that is going on Monday night, so we're not going to have the clarity by the time we need to make the decision. So if you have no White, give me Bucky. If White plays, give me Chubb. And then Hill, London, Smith, Debo, you bench Tyreek. Yeah, so we leave the wide receiver and flex as is. Obviously, next week, when Tua is here, then it's a very different situation. But for this week, we bench Tyreek. But Ethan, with his shifts, he wanted us to skip his, and we gave him that refund earlier today. So we're going to just go ahead and mark these as complete so we don't need to look at them anymore. I love Bijan coming out with another trade. This is Brees versus Achane and Harrison. So obviously expectation is that Tua is back this next week. When Tua is back here, I think that we can assume that Devon Achane goes back to being a mid RB1 in fantasy. You're getting Harrison, who has a low-end wide receiver 1 upside. So it's a very interesting trade. If we didn't get the news regarding Tua today, I would for sure want to keep the best player with Breece Hall. I think the Tua news makes it a lot more appealing, but you know what? I'm still going to keep Breece with the usage that we had last week with this coaching staff moving away completely from Braylon Allen and going straight in the direction of Breece Hall. Like Breece Hall had everything in this backfield. Now, Jolly Green coming out with a massive donut says, looking for recommendations on starts this week. Got a few guys coming back and have a hard time trusting Kupp and Adams his first game back. Also, Montgomery's going to have a tough week. It is a tough matchup for Montgomery, of course. He's still probably playing. We're going to go Mahomes over Fields with the Russ news. Running back, we play Bijan and Brian Robinson. Obviously, the Montgomery would be ahead, and Montgomery may be in RB2 if he had a better matchup than the Vikings, but still play him in the flex anyway. Going over to wide receiver, Neighbors, first week back, automatic start. Kupp is good to go, automatic start. Tight end, you have no Hawkinson. We're going to go with Kincaid. And then down here in the flex spot, I mean, this is just a nutso team. I think we take Godwin and Montgomery. If you don't trust Devontae Adams' first game as a Jet, I trust Adams more than I trust Amari, just because the familiarity with the coaching staff as well as, not the entire coaching staff, the offensive coordinator as well as Rodgers. But if you don't trust Adams, I think you can go ahead and play Godwin and Montgomery. Now let's move this over. We're going to get into a free team review from TJ. Excited to check this out for you, my friend. This is Brees Almighty. Love the team name. This is actually my first time seeing this team name. And of course, real quick, if y'all wanted to get a free full-blown team review like TJ is, obviously you can go over to Underdog Fantasy and take advantage of the offer that we have, where if you use promo code FLOCK, you are going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting that free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I know who we should go ahead and credit with that free team review voucher. And if you're looking for a pick'em tomorrow to pair up with your free Aaron Rodgers square, I'd be looking at David Montgomery to have 61.5 total yards and Brandon Ayuk to have fewer than 61.5 receiving yards. But let's move this over, and this is that free team review from TJ. Here we are, the third team in the league analyzer. Currently at quarterback, we are elite. We are sitting with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, when we have Daniels, we can start him here every single week, regardless of matchup. Really no hesitation whatsoever. So I think that we are good to go. Don't need a backup. Going over to what we have at running back, we are currently sitting with Brees Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs. So we have two top 10 running backs in the long term. Now, there is a very interesting running back down there on the waiver wire. You have Zach Moss. Now, it does look like Zach Moss has potentially been benched for Chase Brown. Obviously, that is a concern here. But with that being said, there's still an outside chance that they decide to go back to Zach Moss. If very worst case scenario, Zach Moss is an elite handcuff back. So for me, I would rather roster Zach Moss than somebody like Tyrone Tracy, who's in a worse offense and also isn't the starting guy there. Now, of course, you don't need to make that pivot right now. If you wanted to go ahead and if you wanted to instead cut the receiver, you can. You can cut Leggett for Zach Moss. But I definitely think you need to pick up Moss at the minimum. But what I would personally do if this was my team is I would cut Tracy, I would pick up Moss, and I would cut Leggett, and I would pick up Michael Pittman Jr., even with Anthony Richardson coming in. Going over to receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, who's about to get Tua in this next week. Obviously, super excited about that. We have DJ Moore, Brian Thomas, two very solid wide receiver 2 options for the long term here. Amari Cooper, very solid wide receiver 2 option. It's a league in which you can start 4 receivers weekly, so the wide receiver depth does matter a bit more. Dell, Jameson are definitely potential sell-high candidates where if you could package Jameson and Sam Laporta and pivot over to like a true elite tight ends, pivot over to somebody like Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, George Kittle, maybe even Brock Bowers. I think you could go ahead and look to do that. Where on the other end, you could do the same thing with Tank Dell. Really, it's just about maybe moving off of that receiver. And if you're able to make that 2-for-1 tier up, what I'd probably look to do at that point is I'd more likely than not would actually look to pick up a running back off the waiver wire with our extra roster spot. And maybe you wouldn't have to drop Tyrone Tracy if you were to make that move to pick up Zach Moss. But I think that's all I got for you. I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. I think it's a very good team. You can see that with the league analyzer, with us being up at 3rd, with us being 8-4. Obviously, I'm assuming we're playing against the league median here every week as well. But I think it's a great team. I don't think that there are too many moves you need to make here. KV coming out with a massive dono. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and hook you up with a free trade question and a free start set question here as well. So you should have free vouchers for both of these if you have any questions. Big Texas play, hook 'em horns. But first win of the season last weekend and playing two other struggling teams over the next 2 weeks. Any advice on trades, or should we just stay put and hope for the best? Hoping my sleeper league link works this time. 100% does, my guy. Going to be excited to look at it. This is cooking up some love. This is the 5th team in the league analyzer. So it is nice that we are in the top half, but at the same time, it's a very even league in general. Looking at it, you only start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. So definitely wide receiver depth is not a priority here for us. And instead, we are trying to optimize for upside at the very top of the lineup, as well as what we have at quarterback. So we are currently sitting with Jordan Love at QB. With Love, completely fine with him. Obviously, I don't view him as like the elite fantasy option because he's not going to run the ball. But at the same time, you can make an argument that he could potentially lead the NFL in passing yards, potentially lead the NFL in passing touchdowns per game in the second half of the season. So I think he's a very solid QB, and I don't think you have to bench him regardless of what the matchup is at any point. So I don't think you have to roster a second option. Now, if you wanted to pick up Caleb Williams for some rushing upside here, potentially in the long haul, that's something that we can do, but definitely not something that we need to. Going over to what we have at running back, we currently are sitting with Devon Achane at the very top. If we didn't get the news regarding Tua today, that Tua sounds like he'll be back next week, I would say 1 in 5 roster. We can't be thinking about long-term upside. We need to go through. We need to sell Achane for what we can get right now. But now that you know Tua is probably coming back next week, even on a 1 in 5 roster, no way in hell I'm wanting to sell Devon Achane. I think we'll go right back to being an RB1 starting next week here. So not wanting to make a pivot there. Going over to what we have at RB2, we have James Cook back in. So we have, a solid RB1, solid RB2 that we're able to start every single week, regardless of the matchup. We have Ramondre, Tyler Algier as quality depth pieces. We have Braylon Allen, Trey Sermon, Ty Chandler. So looking at what we have with this team, I like the running back room. I like the amount of running backs that we are rostering. Now that Aaron Jones is back in and this team traded for Cam Akers, however, I think for me personally, I would look to go ahead and I would look to move on from Ty Chandler and just pick up a different waiver wire option. I think I would drop Ty Chandler and go ahead and pick up a running back like Ray Davis or Jalen Warren or even Blake Corum, that if you were to get an injury to the running back in front of them, they are auto starts. Whereas if you're going to be looking at Ty Chandler, if Aaron Jones were to get injured again, then at that point, Ty Chandler's probably splitting a backfield with Cam Akers. So I don't know how excited we would be about it. Now going over to what we have at receiver, we have St. Brown. We should get Derek Carr back in 2 weeks for Chris Olave. We have Ayuk, JSN. We have Ricky Pearsall down there at the bottom end of the bench. For me personally, I think I would go ahead. I think I would let go of Ricky Pearsall and pick up DeAndre Hopkins. With all the wide receiver rumors that we have circulating right now, I think that there is a non-0% chance that we get a DeAndre Hopkins trade, that he ends up getting dealt somewhere like KC, and then all of a sudden you actually do just have a tremendous amount of value for him here. So if we could go through, if we could cut Pearsall, pick up Hopkins, I think it'd make a lot of sense. Tight end, we have Kraft, Andrews. I know Andrews was better than Kraft this past week. I'm completely fine with us rostering both of these tight ends. All I would ask is for us to start Tucker Kraft over Mark Andrews this week. And honestly, I don't really think that there are too many moves to make with this roster. If we had a time machine and we went back and we sold Brandon Ayuk, I would love it. But obviously, much easier said than done at this point. We have no time machine. And since we have the news with Tua returning next week, I'm going to be wanting to hold on to Devon Achane. Whereas before this, on a 1 in 5 roster, I may have been looking to sell just to get some points in ASAP. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, my guy. I also sent you that free trade question. I also sent you that free start sit question as well. So if you ever have any other additional question you want to send my way, don't hesitate. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you, and I really hope I was able to help you out in some way. But let's move this over to our next question. This one's going to be from Walshma, something like that. Here at running back, we are looking at Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, Tyler Algier, Bucky Irving, Bijan. Super easy every single week, regardless of matchup. We play Bijan and Joe Mixon. Pollard in a really good spot with no Tajay Spears, but don't know if we can be playing Pollard over those guys when they're 8.5-point dogs. Going over to wide receiver, I think we are going to be going with Evans now that he's cleared, fully good to go. DK Metcalf for the flex. This is where things get difficult between Devonta Smith as well as Tony Pollard. Smith, I want to play because you have no Dallas Goedert, and at the same time, it's just a much better offense. You probably go with the safe option of Tony Pollard, though, and that's, I don't know. If you are looking at Tony Pollard, you have 20-plus opportunities locked in. It's a garbage offense, but still, you're going to get the receiving involvement. So I think we go Pollard here. Now, Carter coming out with a trade question. This is Montgomery versus Jonathan Taylor. I would rather have JT in the long term. Now, obviously, if you are a 2-4 team, even if you're maybe a 3-3 team, you can make a strong argument to go with David Montgomery for the reason that JT is currently hurt. And at the same time, Montgomery's through his bye where Jonathan Taylor isn't. So at the very minimum, you're in a situation in which you are going to be getting 2 extra games for David Montgomery than you would be Jonathan Taylor. So if you were a team that needed wins right this second, I think you probably go with Montgomery. But if you can afford to think long-term upside, then there I think we're going to go JT. Now, Big Johnson coming out with a start sit question. Here at wide receiver, we are going to be playing the combo of Jaden Reed and Deebo Samuel relatively easily. And then down in the flex, our best available running back would probably be Travis Etienne if he does play. So you know what? We're just going to go right back to wide receiver, and we are going to be playing Tyreek Hill. Now that Trey Sermon's good to go, I'm not interested in Goodson. I'm not interested in Sermon either. I think you probably just go ahead and you just jam in both receivers or all 3 receivers. Now, Chris says, not sure who to start at running back or the flex. So, Chris, in the future, if you wanted to go through and ask like, hey, I need two running backs and a flex, just put 2 empty running back slots like this and then put the running backs you'd be interested in underneath and put just 1 empty flex spot. And then I can go through and I can fill out everything for you. Obviously, I can tell you here as well, but I think it'd be easier for you the other way. But anyway, I would start Jordan Mason for sure now that Mason is cleared and 100% good to go. And then for a second running back slot, I'm going to be going with Chase Brown, and what should be a much better offense than what you have with the Giants or the Raiders. And then for our flex between Worthy, Douglas, Madison, Tracy. If you end up with, say, no Zamir White, Alexander Madison would give you a very safe projection and a very safe floor. But if Zamir White does play, I think I would prefer Xavier Worthy. Now, Caleb coming out with the start set says, who should we flex? I need upside because I started the Saints defense. Whittington is only if Kupp is out. Okay. Gotcha. Jordan Mason. Before we look at any other options, you go ahead and you play Jordan Mason. Demario Douglas is in here. What are we doing here? I think we actually probably pivot from Douglas, to be honest with you. Do we have any options? Well, the upside play is we don't play Demario Douglas super early, and we plan on a different option because if Kenneth Walker ends up not playing, Zach Charbonnet is by far and away the best option here. So what I think I would do is if you don't have word that Kenneth Walker is good to go by the London game, I would not play Demario Douglas because I want to wait and give ourselves the opportunity to play Charbonnet. Hookamorns. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. There's a flag, but we almost had a pick six. We got a pick inside the 10-yard line. Oh, for the love of God, don't be defensive holding. But anyway, I want to give ourselves the ability to go with Zach Charbonnet later on. So I probably would go ahead. I'd actually probably just plan on playing Najee. That way we get the ability to pivot over to Charbonnet. K-Ton says, why are you so high on Jordan Mason? Let's see why I'm so high on Jordan Mason, and Jordan Mason is a must-start player. This is going to be very complicated here. Then, trust me, I hope Jordan Mason's a bum. I have to play against Jordan Mason in the Flock League this week. So let's move this over. Let's click on Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason this season. 28 rush attempts, 20 rush attempts, 19 rush attempts, 24 rush attempts, 14 rush attempts, and then he gets hurt. The man's averaging 20 opportunities a game in one of the best offenses in the NFL. Jordan Mason's a must-start. And then we're going to go ahead. We will take Najee with the hope that we can pivot over to Zach Charbonnet. But let's move this over to H. Jacobson. Says 1-5, and we need some help. Running back. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take Kareem Hunt. And dear God, the call's so bad. Everybody's chunking bottles onto the field. But anyway, we're going to go ahead. We are going to get in Kareem Hunt as well as James Conner. Don't love the matchup for James Conner. And actually, having HN here, HN versus Hunt is very close. If this is a full PBR format, so with this being a full PBR league, I think we go with HN over Hunt. Going over to wide receiver. We're going to take Brian Thomas. We're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. Don't love the matchup for Harrison going up against the Chargers, but he has been cleared and he is good to go. Our best running back option here would be Kareem Hunt. But for me personally, in a full PPR format, I would rather go ahead. I'd rather just take Tyreek. Because if we can take Tyreek here, he had 10 targets, and at the same time, you had the implied team total of 20.5 points. So obviously much more excited about this roster once Tua comes back next week, but it is what it is. Okay. But yeah, you have an implied team total like 20.5 points here for this Miami offense. Case Soliner says, is Charbonnet a better option than Kirk this week? So looking at this, Charbonnet with no Kenneth Walker is 100% a better option than Christian Kirk. Now, the issue is we don't know if we're going to have clarity on Kenneth Walker by the time the London game kicks off. So what I would like to do is I would like to hopefully get some additional information before we go through and get somebody in the starting lineup like Christian Kirk super early tomorrow morning. But there are no other real options that we can plan on and go, okay, well, Kenneth Walker plays. This is who we're going to go with. So I think we probably just go ahead and play Pickens and Kirk, unless before the London game we get word that you are going to have no Kenneth Walker. And then if you get official word you have no Kenneth Walker, we'll pivot over to Charbonnet. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. They reversed the Texas call. Here's what just went down in the Texas game, if anybody's not watching this. The officials made a BS call of defensive pass interference that completely changed the game. The fans in the stands went nuts, threw 1,000 water bottles on the field. The referees got scared for their life and went, okay, we'll change the call. 10 minutes after it was made. That is, have y'all ever seen that? I mean, they changed the call to the right call, but still, that is insane. The referees were scared for their lives leaving the stadium. But I've never seen that. WDex says it's like the Browns game from 10 years ago. C Money says at a NASCAR race maybe. Can y'all let me know in the live chat how many people in this chat have been to a NASCAR event? I have never been. I don't know if there are any near Austin. But if y'all been to a NASCAR event, let me know in the live chat. Is it fun? I don't drink, so I don't know if it would be fun for me. But anyway, let's move this over to our next question. This is coming out from Dart Purdy. This is Adams, Christian Kirk, Vordavon, Achane. We're going to go Achane now that you get official word that Tua should be back next week. I view Christian Kirk barely better than a waiver wire option. I'm viewing Devontae Adams as a wide receiver 2 rest of season, whereas I think Devon Achane is a mid RB1 once Tua is back in. Now, Mick Zelmers coming out with one of those free Underdog team reviews. Excited to check it out. This is my Dark Twisted Fantasy Hookamorn's touchdown. This is the number 1 team in the league analyzer here. Excited to check it out. It is a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So here in this league, wide receiver depth is not going to matter at all. And really the only thing that is a concern is getting the best player in every deal, making 2-for-1 trades, and having the top end talent and having as much upside as possible. So looking at our QB, we have the QB1. Love to see it. Don't need a roster backup quarterback. Beautiful. Going over to RB, we have the RB1 and the RB2 in Saquon Barkley and Kyren Williams. Absolutely love to see it. Beyond this, we have decent depth. We have Etienne, Moss, Singletary, Eckler. So we have the best quarterback room in the league. We have the best running back room in the league. We have the best wide receiver room in the league where we have 3 wide receiver 1s. We have Pickens and Juju as quality depth. So there is very little that I'm able to say with this team. Obviously, this team's, if you watch the Flock League, you already know this team's 1,000 times better than mine is. Crazy that we are 3-3. Literally absurd. Should be much better going into the future. What I would look to do personally is I would see if we can pay up and go get a true elite level tight ends. Like if you're able to possibly trade a depth receiver like George Pickens with Jake Ferguson and go get to Travis Kelce, go get to Trey McBride, go get to George Kittle, 100% that is a move that we are wanting to make. God, and we just Texas is winning this game. I'm sorry, Texas is winning this game. But yeah, if we can pay up for an elite tight end, there's no reason not to in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. And at the same time, you just have an elite roster top to bottom. I think if we can go ahead and make that 2-for-1 deal to get an upgrade there at tight end, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, after this week, we are going to be dropping Noah Fant when Jake Ferguson's through bye. If you're not able to trade for the elite tight end, then we'll just rely on Ferguson the rest of the way. And I think what we are going to look to do as well is we can make some waiver wire moves today and pivot over to players that have a higher ceiling. Just because the only thing that matters here with this team is upside, upside, upside. So if we look at some of the waiver wire names that we have, for me, I personally think that Jonathan Brooks, Rico Dowdle have a higher ceiling than what you have with like Singletary and Eckler. So I drop Singletary, Eckler, pick up Brooks and Dowdle. I would also drop Juju Smith-Schuster for Jordan Addison as well. And then obviously I would love to go through and I would love to see if we can package together the depth receiver or the depth running back like Travis Etienne and Jake Ferguson to pivot over to a top 3 to 4 tight end option. And drop Noah Fant if we were able to get the elite tight end, or drop Noah Fant the week after Ferguson's bye. But yes, this is a crazy, crazy good team. I think you are already, if you look at the league analyzer, we're already the heavy favorite to win this. Now let's move this over to our next question coming out from Swag Piglet. Funny name. Quarterback, we are looking at Mahomes or Kyler. We're going to go Kyler now that you have Harrison back in. You have some rushing upside. Running back, we are going to be going with the combo of Chase Brown. And if you were to have no Kenneth Walker, then obviously Zach Charbonnet is the easy start here. If Kenneth Walker does play, however, you have no Brian Robinson, then Austin Eckler is the option. But if Brian Robinson plays and Walker does as well, we're just going to play both Cincy running backs and hope this team puts up a zillion points. And then going over to the flex, we'll be going with Brandon Ayuk and Marvin Harrison Jr. relatively easily. But yeah, in terms of Zach Moss, like I said, if one of these guys were to have the starter out in their offense, then it's a very easy spot for you to go ahead and pivot. Georgia just took back the game. RIP. Moving over to our next question. Gator Nick. I'm 5-1. I sent Lamb for Smith and JSN. He countered Walker Montgomery over Brian Robinson. Prefer a deal for Lamb only. So Kyron to Lamb, you can make an argument. Lateral move. Devonta Smith for Brian Robinson. I think I'd rather have Brian Robinson, but I mean, hell yeah, if you can get Kenneth Walker instead, this is an absolute no-brainer. If you can go through and if you can get Kenneth Walker, I would honestly kind of prefer the second side on both of these deals, but the Walker one would just be an absolute no-brainer. The other one would be close and up to you. But let's move this over to our next question. Vivek coming out with a start sit. Here at running back, Jordan Mason must start name every single week. I know he was disappointing last week because he got injured, but he got injured. He should be good to go based off everything that I have read. I'm going over to wide receiver. Sounds like Evans should be good to go as well. Was scary with him popping up with the hamstring, but sounds like it's beyond him. And then going down to the flex spot, we're more likely than not going to be looking at wide receiver, assuming that this is a full PPR format, which the league analyzer is saying it is. I think that we are going to go ahead and we are going to be taking Deebo Samuel. And the bonus of this is We get to watch the Chiefs-Niners game, which should be one of the, or if not the most exciting game of the week. We have 3 options in there, so we get to have some rooting interest as well. Adam Moyer coming out says, Pickens, Dobbs, Trey Tucker, Palmer, Madison, Fry. We start 1 full PPR. We are going to go ahead. We will take George Pickens. With no Fields, I think maybe the Steelers are worse than what they have been, but the passing volume could actually be better. So yeah, I think we are going to go ahead and we're going to take George Pickens here. Now, Jay Protze coming out with the trade. This is Brees to Kyron upgrade, especially with Kyron already being through his bye. Rome Odunze to Amari Cooper upgrade, or Zay Flowers to Amari lateral move. We're paying Rome Odunze to get it done. This is a very fair trade, and it is up to you. I would say there's probably more value right now on the Brees Hall side. But honestly, I think if you wanted the Kyron Williams into this, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever. It's so close, though. What I would probably do is I'd probably try to squeeze out a little bit more value by keeping Rome Odunze and just keeping the upside play. Because if he's willing to do the deal with Rome, I'm sure they're willing to do the deal with no Rome as well. Okay. Let's move this over to our next question. K-Dirt coming out with a trade. Says quarterback is Love. Running back, we have H.N. Pollard, Brian Robinson, Charbonnet, Emmanuel Wilson. Wide receiver, we have Nico, Drake, Waddle, Deontay, Bub. Tight end, we have Kraft. So Nico to Taylor, upgraded my mind, and then you get Taylor back earlier than you do with Nico. Pollard to JSN, clear downgrade. Running back, we'd be starting Achane, Brian Robinson this week. Wide receiver, we're going to be going with Drake, Waddle, Deontay. I don't really see what this trade accomplishes, to be honest. Because once Nico and Taylor are both back and fully healthy, I would probably honestly hold on to Tony Pollard in this. Because there is a small possibility you end up getting Brian Robinson missing this game. Then all of a sudden, you kind of need the Pollard production in a way that you don't need JSN. You don't start JSN this week. And long term, obviously, you make an argument Nico's as valuable as JT. But Travis coming out says, need the RB2 flex spot. Could put Brian Robinson at running back. Cup is the plan to start, but if he doesn't, who are we going to roll with? Okay. Running back, could put B-Rob in at RB. Yeah, let's do that real quick. We're going to put Brian Robinson at running back. Flex. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I think we go ahead and we play Kareem Hunt. Now, if you get Rachaad White ruled out, then at that point, you could potentially pivot from Kareem to Bucky Irving, but I'm not wanting to do that if White is going to be playing here. And then if we have no Cooper Kupp, the guy that I pivot to in that instance would probably be George Pickens. If Rachaad White plays, but if White doesn't play, then we go with Bucky. Okay. But let's move this over, and our mouse just died. So you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to charge this mouse for 30 seconds and answer questions in the live chat. Lovey says, Yo, Mason, do you have the Texas game on in the background? Yes, I do. The stream doesn't let me operate if I'm playing a game on a second monitor. So we have a laptop in here, and we are watching Texas game on a laptop. But somebody asked Devontae Adams for Devon Achane. I would rather have Achane over Adams. I think that with Wilson in this Jets offense, I'm personally projecting Devontae Adams out to be a mid to high end wide receiver 2 rest of season. Whereas I think Achane, once 2 is back in next week, could very easily be a mid RB1. So I'd rather have Achane than Adams. Caesar says Brian Robinson and Connor for Jahmyr Gibbs. Very dependent on your team and your formats. If it is a league where it's like a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, full PPR league, where really the depth doesn't matter and the only thing that matters is trying to get the best option you can in the starting lineup, there in that case, I think you make a strong argument for Jahmyr Gibbs. But if it's a league where you have multiple flexes and we really do need to be optimizing for depth, then in that case, I'd probably just hold on to the 2 starters. Steven says Chase Brown or Tank Bigsby. If Etienne misses, I think it's a close call and honestly up to you. If Etienne plays, it's not remotely close and you do need to go ahead and you need to play Chase Brown. But definitely you need to monitor what you have with Travis Etienne. Okay. Ronan says, do you think Wilson's going to be a top quarterback? Are you saying Russell Wilson? 0% chance Russell Wilson be a top fantasy quarterback. Like Russell Wilson just doesn't have the rushing upside that he did early in his NFL career. It's a low volume passing attack as well. So yeah, I have absolutely no hope for Russell Wilson from a fantasy football perspective. I think that there is a chance Russell Wilson comes in and is a good real life QB and potentially helps the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, if Mike Tomlin thinks that Russ will be better than Fields, then maybe. If you look at the line in this game, sportsbooks are kind of making it seem that Fields would be a better option than Russ would be. And y'all know I'm always on the side that says sportsbooks know best. But so I don't know. Definitely don't be excited about Russell Wilson and picking him up in fantasy football. The only thing that you could potentially look at is Russell Wilson being a positive for George Pickens. But let's move this over to our next question on the site. This is coming out from Cali Kid. This one is what's up, Mason? Need some help with the flex full PPR. Between Raheem, Algier, Harrison, JSN, Puka, Brian Thomas, Hawkinson, I think we go ahead. I think we take Harrison. If we wanted to go elsewhere, it would be Brian Thomas. And if we didn't have the 100% guarantee that Harrison was going to be good to go and Harrison would be the option here in Los Angeles, I think you just play Brian Thomas for the London game. But we already got the confirmation here that Harrison is good to go. So I think you play him. Now, J-Hack coming out. Here starts a question. Running back, we're looking at Bigsby, HN, Mixon, Algier, Brooks. Very easy to go with Joe Mixon. Obviously, Tua's back next week. Then I think you can go ahead and play Devon HN. But here, you definitely have to go with Drake London in the flex spot as well. Phenomenal team. Sucks that you have to bench HN. And maybe next week it's a tougher question with Tua back in. Next question coming out from White Mamba, essentially. Flip the M and the W says, hey, Mason, currently 6th in the standings at 3-3 and started Javonte and Denver's defense this week. Hallelujah. In a good spot long-term, but having trouble trading Baker plus depth to upgrade the lineup. Any ideas are welcome. Thanks for all you do and what all the team does. Really do appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for the support. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question. Let me hook you up with a free trade question as well. And let's dive into the roster. So team name is going to be Survive. So we are sitting here 5th in the league analyzer of 12 teams. Looks like you have a little grouping of 3 teams at the top, and then you just have the gradual decline beyond that. But yeah, you said we were 3-3, but going really strong to potentially go to 4-5 with the Thursday night games. So you already mentioned that we're not going to be able to trade Baker in a 2-for-1 deal to get an upgrade elsewhere in the lineup. Obviously, you know, that's what I would want to do when we're sitting here with Jaden Daniels, because we are playing Daniels every single week regardless, and doing so with confidence as well. But beyond that, with Baker, he's too good to cut. So while I would love to sell if we potentially could, if you're not able to, it is what it is. We'll just go ahead and we will just hold on to him. Going over to running back, we are currently sitting with Devon Achane, who gets back to a next week and goes back being a mid RB1. We have McCaffrey here for the long-term upside. We have Javonte for some depth here at RB. We have Pacheco for the long-term upside. So what we are effectively doing at running back right now is we're holding on and just trying to survive. If we can survive, then at that point, I think that we should be really excited when you end up getting CMC back in, when you end up getting Pacheco back in. So this running back room is mediocre in the short term. But starting next week, obviously, super excited about Achane. Who knows? Maybe we get a blurb saying McCaffrey's going to be back a week from now. We have no idea. So running back, I don't think we need to be doing much now that it looks like we are going to be 4-3, because we do survive another week and we can be thinking a little more long-term here. Going over to what we have at wide receiver, we have Godwin and Harrison as low end wide receiver ones for the long term. Wide receiver depth not going to matter much because it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. We have JSN, Keenan Allen as viable options if we need them to be. We have Romeo Doubs, Khalil Shakir. Now that Harrison is cleared and good to go, as well as now that Aaron Jones is cleared and good to go, I think that there is a pretty easy waiver pivot you can make here. I think you could go ahead and drop both Greg Dortch as well as Ty Chandler. And I would actually look to pick up both Jalen Warren and Trey Benson. Because if you were to get an injury to Najee Harris, I'd be very confident that we can start Jalen Warren. Whereas an injury to Aaron Jones, I don't know if I'd be that confident that we could start Ty Chandler with Cam Akers potentially turning it into a running back by committee. And there's no world in which we start Greg Dortch here. So I would drop Greg Dortch. I would drop Chandler. I'd pick up Jalen Warren, Trey Benson. If you were sitting at, say we drop the next 2 games, we fall to 3-5, and we still don't have CMC back, then maybe at that point we panic and we sell CMC for what we can get and get an upgrade inside the starting lineup right this second. But the reality is, I think that you're in a situation in which we probably move to 4-3 this week. The team's going to get dramatically better over the coming weeks just by getting healthier without us doing anything here. So I probably don't want to be making too many moves. I think I just kind of leave this team as is outside of the waiver wire pivots that you have at the very bottom. And yeah, we make those waiver wire pivots at the bottom, and beyond that, I don't know. I think we just chill here. Hope that we get McCaffrey back in soon. If we get McCaffrey back in soon, then we're golden. Obviously, there's a chance that Baker blows up again on Monday nights. And then at that point, if you can't trade Baker, Javonte for running back upgrade, we do just that. But you were saying that's going to be hard to get anything for Baker Mayfield. So I hate to give you this answer. I know it is an answer that absolutely sucks. But we make those waiver wire pivots that we talked about. And we're going to try to sell Baker, but you were saying that you can't. And I think we just roll into the week as is. But I really appreciate you, and I really hope that I was able to help you out in some way. And like I said, I sent you over that free trade question and that free start sit question. So if you have any additional questions about this team, you can send them over my way. But Matt says, I signed up for Underdog. How do I get the team review? So obviously, if y'all don't know, we have the promo with Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. And you'll be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick as well for tomorrow night, less than half a total yard. You have to sign up to Underdog with code FLOCK with that link in the live chat. Then set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog account. And then the next morning, Underdog sends me a list of all the email addresses that signed up to Underdog Fantasy with code FLOCK. And we go ahead and we accredit those users with free team review vouchers the following day. And then you go through the process as if you were just going to buy a team review on flockfantasy.com. And then once you get to the checkout, or once you get to the creator page, it should show that it's free for you. So obviously, if you don't know how to do that, go over to the expert advice button in the top right corner. Go through the team review process. And then once you get to the page with the creators, it should say $0 for me if you have that team review. And yeah, sorry, of course, you do need to deposit the $10 on Underdog as well. And of course, if you ever wanted to ask any questions, you could always go through flockfantasy.com, hit that expert advice button, send a super message, send a start set question, a trade question, or a team review to get you a guaranteed answer in the live stream. But let's move this back over to our next question here. This one is going to be coming out from, I believe, AB23. This is a trade question where they're trading Kareem Hunt and Barkley for CMC, Jones, and Pollard. Nope, can't do it. If we were told that McCaffrey was going to be back 2 weeks from now, then sure, go ahead and make this deal. But you were taking on so much risk with this. And I don't know if you were getting compensated enough for the risk of McCaffrey when we already have the number one asset in fantasy with Barkley. Now, going over to our next question, Hellboy Jordan says, excluding traded players, I have Lamar, Amari, Kirk, Waddle, Rome, Mason, Moss, Braylon Allen, Kincaid, and Hawkinson. Always excited to see my guy going from Walker to Breece, I think is a slight upgrade at this point based off the usage that we had with Breece versus Braylon Allen this past week with this new coaching staff. Going from Nico Collins to Malik Neighbors is a massive upgrade with Malik Neighbors being fully healthy. We're paying Zay Flowers to get it done. Looking at the team as well, I think this does make a lot of sense. So yeah, I would go ahead and I would trade Walker, Nico, Flowers for Breece and Neighbors. I think we do it. Now, Anthony Gamero with the start set says running back help. The bench, Charbonnet, Walker's out. Future trade out. A little confused. We go James Conner over Tyler Algier, wide receiver. We're going to go ahead. We will play Marvin Harrison. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. We go with Deontay Johnson in what's a great matchup against Washington. If Walker's out, then you go with you go with Zach Charbonnet over James Conner. And then with Marv and Wilson, I think you can trust them. I'd rather have Deontay Johnson over him. I'd rank those receivers Deontay, Wilson, then Marvin Harrison Jr. Hope I was able to answer your question, though. Very confusing the way that was worded. Cali Kid coming out with 8 questions. Says, Mason, what's up? Needing a wide receiver too, considering picking up Douglas, and is Walker playing? We don't know about Walker yet. I don't think they activated or brought up any running backs from the tactics squad, practice squad, so I'd imagine that he is good to go. Quarterback, obviously, we go Hurts. Running back, we are going to go ahead. I would play Chase Brown over Ramondre Stevenson. Now, if we end up getting, say, no Kenneth Walker, then you could pivot over to Charbonnet, but we just don't know yet. Going over to receiver, I think we have to go ahead and play Brian Thomas, which should be a bounce back spot. And then down in the flex, again, like I said, you have no Kenneth Walker. We go Zach Charbonnet. You have no Rashad White. We go Bucky Irving. If both those guys play, we'll go with the backup option of George Pickens. But hopefully you have no Walker so we can get Charbonnet in with a 3-down workload. But Starvin Marvin says, can't decide on running backs. Wouldn't let me add in Jordan Mason to the lineup. We are going to be going with Dobbins and Jordan Mason. So I'm going to leave this empty for Mason. And then going over to the flex, you could potentially be looking at... Actually, never mind. I was going to say we could be looking at Dobbins over Higgins, but I'm an idiot. We already playing Dobbins at running back. So yeah, I think we leave this lineup as is. I think a running back, you go Dobbins and Jordan Mason. Now, Julian coming out of the question says, hey, Mason, I'm currently 6-0, but need advice for this week. Please help and pick the 2 receivers and 1 flex. You're 6-0, my guy. I don't think we need much help. I think you're crushing. But anyway, wide receiver, we are going to be rolling with Jaden Reed, as well as I think you can go with T. Higgins over Devontae Adams this week in a tough matchup for Adams. Obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals have been at the very top of the NFL consistently with their passing volume over the past month. And then going down the flex, if you were to have Brian Robinson in a great matchup against Carolina, you just absolutely have to play him. If Brian Robinson does not play, then our backup option's Devontae Adams. But plan A is Brian Robinson. Now, Thomas coming out of the start says, half PPR is super flex. Need help deciding between who to start at tight end and a flex. Worried I'd have too many Green Bay and Houston players. I wouldn't be worried about that. Both are great offenses. Could be a very high scoring game. I just want to play the best players. And we already started Javonte Williams, so absolutely love to see that. Going over to tight end, I will go Dalton Schultz. You've actually seen a bump in targets over the past 2 weeks with no Nico Collins. Obviously, hasn't been good. Hasn't had a single game with double-digit fantasy points, but still. And then going down to the flex, we just go ahead and we play Jordan Mason. Let me double-check to make sure there's nobody else we're going to go with. You got Amari. But no, yeah, we go with Jordan Mason. Already cleared, good to go. 3-down workload, tough matchup, but obviously still projects out every single week to be a very strong offense. Now, next question coming out from JC1. It's a trade where we're currently 2-4 on pace to lose this week. Do I panic and make the trade? So 2-4 with the shot of falling to 2-5. Yes, I think that you are in a good spot to panic and get rid of Puka Nacua if possible. Think you may end up needing to be honest. But anyway, going ahead and looking at this. HN to Montgomery, upgrade in the short term. Tua's back in next week. Downgrade in the long term. Harrison to Jefferson, massive upgrade. Jaden Reed to Juju, massive downgrade. We're paying Puka Nacua to get this done. We are getting the best player in the deal, but possibly getting the best 2 players. We're giving up a lot of value to do so. The only reason I think I would do this deal with your team in particular is if you are potentially falling to 2-5, Puka Nacua is literally a 0 for us. Puka Nacua legitimately just has no value whatsoever. So I think you can go ahead and I think you can take the Jefferson side. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we could keep Jaden Reed and send AJ Harrison Puka for like Montgomery Jefferson. I think this would be a much better deal for us. Now, Steven coming out with a start sit question. Here, running back, we are to be rolling out James Cook. 100% healthy, we're going to go J.K. Dobbins in a good matchup as well. Tight end, Tucker Kraft, very easy play, even with the disappointing game last week. Brian Thomas should be in a bounce back spot. Actually, we have great option. We go Higgins over Brian Thomas. And then we go with James Conner down in the flex as well. So, we could go Garrett Will. There's so many strong players here. I have Higgins and Wilson ranked literally back-to-back this week. I think Higgins-Wilson is up to you. Probably need to play James Conner, though, just with the guaranteed workload. Actually, this is a full PPR format. Full PPR league, I think you could go Wilson and Higgins. Super close. Comes down to what you think with this matchup here. Can y'all spam the chat? Would y'all rather play Garrett Wilson or James Conner? Would y'all rather play James Conner or Garrett Wilson? Garrett. Everybody is on the Garrett Wilson side. I have Garrett Wilson ranked 35, James Conner ranked 37 in my flex ranks this week. So I do agree with y'all. I think it's really close. Looking at the underdog pick'ems, Garrett Wilson's higher, lower, 53.5 receiving yards. James Conner's higher, lower, 65.5 rushing yards, but full PPR format. Obviously, we can expect that Wilson has the reception. So very close on that call. And looks like the Texas game is sadly over. And sadly, we lost. We probably we'll definitely be falling from one in the rankings. Probably down, I'd assume 5 or 6. But anyway. Vision Season coming out says, looking to make a move for the second running back slot. Team name here is Kyler the Creator. This is a league in which you can start 4 receivers weekly. So honestly, you could get away with potentially having a slightly worse running back 2 than usual here. Looking at the team, we are currently 4th in the league analyzer. There are 2 juggernauts at the very top, where this team is Barkley, Walker, Jefferson, Kupp, Godwin, James Cook. Very strong. But we are 3-3. Ooh, there's some easy moves to make immediately with this roster. Starting off at quarterback, we have Kyler. I mean, obviously, Kyler's been disappointing, but at the same time, you're in a spot in which Kyler had the McBride injury. Kyler had the Harrison injury. Now that he has everybody back fully healthy in this offense, I think it should be a much better Cardinals team. Going over to running back, we have Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, Bucky Irving. So yeah, the Pacheco injury happened, and this has made it where we do have a below average RB1. And obviously you can go through and you can make an argument, oh, I want to go ahead and I want to make a trade and get a better running back. And if you could potentially take a piece down on the bench that we don't exactly need on our roster, such as Tucker Kraft, and maybe move from Tucker Kraft and Bucky Irving or Tucker Kraft and Kareem Hunt and go get a running back upgrade that way, then 100% I would like to do so. But just because I would like to do it doesn't mean that it would be something that's easy to do with this team. I think realistically, what you could do is instead of making that trade, I think you probably just optimize the bottom end of your team to hopefully go after some of the high upside running backs. Whereas if you're able to go ahead and if you're able to potentially say move on from Demario Douglas, Juju Smith-Schuster, and pick up these running backs at the very bottom end of your, pick up these running backs off the waiver wire like Jonathan Brooks and Zach Charbonnet, that have the upside to turn into a very strong RB2 option for you rest of season, I think I would rather change the construction of the bottom end of this team. Now, of course, I don't think you need to do that with both Douglas and Juju, specifically because this is a roster where you can start 4 receivers weekly. So I'd say at minimum, you drop Demario Douglas right now and you pick up Jonathan Brooks. I would consider dropping Juju Smith-Schuster for Zach Charbonnet. If you wanted to hold on to the wide receiver depth because we have Nico Collins, then I'd still probably drop Juju Smith-Schuster. Just instead, the other player that I'd be looking to pick up would actually be Jordan Addison. And then again, if we could make that tight end move, I'd do it, but just much easier said than done. I just think you need to pick up the cheap running backs with upside off the waiver wire. But in reality, also this team, where you're 3-3 and we have been getting by so far, and we have a pretty good squad in general, I don't think that there are too many moves that you need to make, because it should just get better as the season goes on, where if we get Tua back next week, Tyreek Hill gets a bump. We have and Nico Collins potentially coming back here in the future as well. We have Pacheco potentially coming back. So looking at the team, you will get natural improvement as the roster gets healthier. I don't think you need to trade for that running back too. I think instead you just roster the high upside running backs at the bottom end of the team that are free off the waiver wire right now. But I really do appreciate you, and I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. And of course, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. Let me move this over to Phoenix Lance's full PPR. Need a tight end in a flex against my best bud and rival this week. So we need a W. Cheers, Mason. Cheers, and thank you for being a long-time member of the flock. And yeah, honestly, it makes me happy to see your name. We're going to send over another free start sit question for you as well. Thank you for always being out here with us, my guy. But anyway, looking at this, here, tight end, we are going with Evan Ingram over Kincaid. Down in the flex, no Collins, no Tolbert, no Rome, no Dowdle, no Spears. It's really Juju or Demario Douglas. If we knew Juju was fully healthy, I'm going to go ahead and take Juju Smith-Schuster. But if you're worried about the hamstring injury whatsoever, I think you could go Douglas. But if both players are fully healthy, I think Juju's in the better offense, and presumably Juju has more touchdown upside. Okay. Now, Green Goblins, happy to see it, says, you already answered $20 starts it, but we're not clear. Green Goblins, if you're in the live chat, can you please let me know what your question was? And I'd be happy to try to be more clear about it. Yeah, please let me know in the live chat so I can try to give you the answer that you were looking for. Craig Patrick says, who's the best receiver you would trade for, Nico? The best receiver I'd trade for Nico Collins would probably be CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. I don't know who's my wide receiver one is. Now, the worst receiver I would trade Nico Collins for. Oh, no, I got you. Never mind. I read it backwards. The best receiver I'd trade for Nico Collins. I think if you were a team that's looking for the fantasy football playoff upside, I think you for sure look to maybe move on from someone like T. Higgins, somebody like Mike Evans. Okay. Keegan says, you guys like Worthy or Addison this week? I would go with Addison over Worthy in a strong matchup here. Okay. Rob says, Green Goblin, start 3 of these 6. Cup, Metcalf, Adams, Harrison, Dell, Juju. I remember this. We start Cup, Metcalf, and Adams. Yeah, Cup, Metcalf, and Devontae Adams. If Cup misses, you go with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we even filled that out with the start set thing as well. But so I'm sorry that I wasn't clear enough earlier. We're going to go Cup, Metcalf, and Devontae Adams. But let's move this over to Ethan. And also, Green Goblin, I'll hook you up with a free start sit question again. I'm sorry that you had to go through and send that second thing. So you should have a free start sit voucher for you as well. But Ethan says, this is a trade where we're sending Puka and Kate Otten for Pitts, Zach Moss, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Backup running back, number 2 receiver in one of the league's worst passing offenses. A tight end that's barely better than the waiver wire options. So I understand that we have Puka on the IR and not getting much value from him, but I don't know if this gives us any upside here. I almost don't see what the reason is for this. But Phoenix Lance coming out with a start set. It's a 0.2 point per carry, half PPR, 6-point passing touchdown format. Leaning CJ Tank, second flex, we have no clue. 0.2 point per carry. Give me 8, Rich. I know it seems crazy, but even if you go through and look at the regular projections this week, Anthony Richardson right now on Underdog is higher, lower, 19.15 fantasy points. You look at Stroud. Stroud is higher, lower, 17.75. You sprinkle in the 0.2 point per carry where Richardson could potentially have 10 more carries than Stroud. That's another 2 points, which is equivalent to another 50 passing yards on top of the rushing production. So yeah, I think you go ahead and you take a Rich. Wide receiver, we are going to go ahead. We will take Darnell Mooney in what should be a very high scoring Atlanta Falcons off. Actually, I'm sorry. We're going to go Tank Dell. I apologize. Second flex, we're going to go Kareem Hunt in a 0.2 point per carry league. Full PBR format, no point per carry element of it. I think you could make an argument for Mooney. I kind of want to start Mooney, but here in this league setting, I think you just play the running back, play it safe. Okay. Now, Ghost coming out with a question says, having a hard time choosing my wide receiver and flex. What are your thoughts for week 7? Thanks for that, brother. Thank you. Running back, we will go with, is this a full PBR? This is a full PBR format. Clyde Reserve is playing. We'll go HM, but it's close. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead. We will take Harrison and Ayuk. Downs, you have AR. Jameson, you have a brutal matchup. And then down there in the flex, we're going to go ahead and we will take Kareem Hunt. Jameson Williams averaging 3 targets a game over the past 3 weeks. And it's a really tough matchup against Minnesota. And then obviously with Josh Downs, hard to be super excited about the passing volume that you are going to have in Indy with Anthony Richardson under center. Now, Botched coming out with a question here. Quarterback, we have Jordan Love. Running back, Bijan Brees. Wide receiver, Reed Diggs. Tight end, we have Kelsey. Going down to the flex, Aaron Jones is good to go. Tough matchup, but I still didn't get to play Aaron Jones in comparison to these other names. I think we have to go with Amari Cooper as well. I'm not super excited to play Amari because I think that there is a small possibility that he comes out and ends up being a really disappointing 30%, 40% snaps of this Buffalo offense. So by no means do I think Amari is a must-start option this week. I think you can look at him. Jordan Addison would be my other option in a great matchup here. Steven coming out with one of those free team reviews. Going to be excited to check this out. This is Neighbor Time. We are second in the league analyzer here. It is a 14-team format, so depth's going to matter a little bit more and it will be tougher to find options off the waiver wire. Like, we go ahead and we look at the best waiver wire options here. You got guys like Cade Otton, Cam Akers, Kamani Vidal, Jalen Wright, Jaleel McLaughlin. So waiver options are no bueno, to put it lightly. But anyway, looking at what we have at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Burrow. Burrow, obviously, mid to high end QB1, specifically in a 14-team format. Feel very comfortable with that. It's a 2-4 roster, so we can't really afford to be thinking long-term upside. And instead, we really need to be thinking about points that we can get in this lineup right this second. So looking at Jordan Mason, I think Mason is somebody that would be very exciting to play. We have Chase Brown, Alexander Madison, Trey Benson, Keaton Mitchell. So I think the running back room's great in a 14-team format, because I'm viewing also, say, Chase Brown as a top 28 bag. So he should be, an RB2 here in this format at the minimum. So running back room looks very strong in the short term. Long term, not as strong, but still decent. Going over to wide receiver, we have Chase, Adams, Diggs. Potentially, this could be a trio that are all inside the top 14 in fantasy finishes. So super strong wide receiver room. It's a league where you only start 2 receivers and 1 flex, so the wide receiver depth beyond this, not super important. I would say there's no world in which I am wanting to go through and I am wanting to start Darius Slayton. So I would drop Darius Slayton and I would prioritize maybe picking up a running back off the waiver wire that's an injury away from making a difference, like Kamani Vidal. Going over to tight end, I think Kraft's top 14 tight end, so I think we have a tight end 1 here. Andrews is just fine as well. So here, looking at the roster, I think it's a very strong team. I think there's a reason we are second in the league analyzer. Depth is harder to come by. Like we said, waiver wire options aren't going to be as good. But realistically speaking, what can we do here? What can we say? I think really the only thing I would look to do is drop Slayton, pick up Vidal, and keep rolling, to be honest. I think you're going to have a much better team. If you were 4-2, I would even say that you were strong enough where you could potentially look at moving on from Jordan Mason. But specifically here on a 2-4 team, I think we definitely need the points now. So I don't think you're able to sell Mason. I think you probably need to look to hold, but I really do appreciate you, and I hope I was able to help you out in some way, but I think it's a very good team, especially in a 14-team league. 12-team league, this would be all right, but 14-team format, I think you're great. Now, let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be coming from Not Shook. This is a start set. Quarterback, we have Allen. Running back, Gibbs, Kyron. Wide receiver, DK, Evans. Tight end, we have Laporta. And then going down to the flex, we are looking at Bucky as the option if you have no Rachaad White in this game. If Rachaad White does end up playing, then we're going to be going with Ladd McConkey. But obviously both play on Monday night, so it is good to know that we have some optionality and we are going to get all the information we need to make this decision. Because, there's also a chance that White doesn't play, but also neither does Ladd, and then you have to play Bucky anyway. But I think you go with Bucky if Rachaad White misses. And I think you go with Ladd if White plays. AJ coming out with a start set. Here, running back, we are going to go ahead and we are going to be taking Trey Sermon. We have no Brooks. We have no CMC. I think Sermon sees more opportunities than Goodson does. Gibson, Ramondre is now playing. So yeah, go with Sermon. And then down in the flex spot, please tell me we have a wide receiver. We have Jalen Waddle that we can play. Not super excited about it, obviously, with no Tua this week, but I still think you can play Waddle. Now, Swayday says, question. I'm down bad. Noah Brown, Goodson, Jordan Whittington for the final flex spot. Obviously, no Cup. It's Jordan Whittington easily. Dear God. I think we go Noah Brown over Goodson. And I think I'd probably go Noah Brown as well over Whittington. If Cup is good to go. I mean, with Noah Brown, I'm not like really excited about him. You have to be desperate. But it should be the highest scoring offense in the NFL, as we've already discussed. Next question is going to be James Cook, Puka Nacua versus Kenneth Walker. We go Kenneth Walker. I don't think it's that close here either. I view Kenneth Walker as a borderline top 5 RB rest of season. Walker looks phenomenal. Now, next question coming out from Drigdon. This is Brian Thomas and Eckler versus Jaden Reed. I have Eckler on my team. I would love to trade him for just absolutely anything. So yeah, I think you go with Jaden Reed. So say Mason did this trade earlier today and was wanting to know your thoughts on it. Love the content. Much love. Thank you, my friend. And yeah, here, if I'm looking at this, I think Brian Thomas is a great buy low candidate. But with that being said, I don't know. I'd still rather have Jaden Reed. I think Eckler's effectively a 0 if Brian Robinson's healthy. Next question is going to be from Lack Sunks. Here, wide receiver, we are going to go ahead. We are going to take Jaden Reed for the flex spot. I'd love to get Harrison if we can. We can play Marvin Harrison. We're going to go with Harrison and then Chase Brown. Now, the only thing that I pivot is if you have no Kenneth Walker this week, then at that point, we would go ahead and we would play Zach Charbonnet instead of Chase Brown. If Kenneth Walker does play, you go Chase Brown. If Kenneth Walker doesn't, you go Charbonnet. Now, Ethan coming out with these starts, it says, scary having 3 guys questionable. Sharp would replace Walker if he's out, but what about Jones? Jones should be good to go. So we're going to go Jones, Walker. Obviously, Charbonnet fills in for Walker if he doesn't. Wide receiver, Deontay Johnson should be good to go. Tight ends, Cade Otton. Flex. This is where you get desperate here. You go Jordan Addison in a really good matchup against the Lions. And then probably Christian Watson and hope for a spike. Send up a prayer that it comes through. But obviously, by no means is that a guarantee here. But if you have no Wicks, I think Watson could see a few more routes run, see a few more targets. Now, Respond coming out here at wide receiver. We are going to be playing Devonta Smith with no Dallas Goederts. And then for the flex, I think you can go T. Higgins over Devontae Adams this week. With it being Adams' first weekend, we can use that as a tiebreaker that maybe starts off a little bit slower. But I'm definitely like less hesitant to start, say, Devontae Adams than I would be to go through and start, say, Amari Cooper. Like, I think you can definitely play Adams. But let's go ahead, hit next question. Let's refresh these. And okay, so we don't have too many more questions to get through on the site. Obviously, if you wanted to ask a question, you always can through flockfantasy.com, and we 100% can get to it really quickly. There aren't too many in line. If you go and hit that button in the top right corner that says expert advice, or the link in the live chat that says ask a question here, you are able to send a super message, start sit question, trade question, get a full-blown team review, whatever you are wanting. Now, I do want to reiterate, if you wanted that team review, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have over on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And at the same time, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick for tomorrow night's game, more than less than half a total yard, and a free team review in the live stream, which we're doing every single day. Just make sure that you set up an account on Underdog Fantasy with the same email address as your account on flockfantasy.com or vice versa. Just make sure that the emails line up. Doesn't matter what account you made when. That way I can go through and that way I can accredit you with that free team review voucher. But let's move this back over to our next question. This one coming out from Ebob. No idea what you're asking. If you want to say hey Mason, I need a wide receiver, then leave a wide receiver slot empty and put the 4 wide receivers you're considering underneath in here. That way I can fill it out for you. My 2 favorite receivers here would probably be Ladd McConkey and Christian Watson. Probably rank them the exact order that we did. But Ladd definitely number 1, and then Waddle potentially could flip over Kirk. Now, Mark says quarterback and running back feel like a toss-up. Quarterback, we are going to go ahead. We will take Sam Darnold's. If you look at Darnold, we have him ranked 1 slot ahead of Mahomes this week. It's a good matchup against Detroit where it should be a high-scoring game environment, while at the same time, we know you can't really run the ball against the Lions. You are going to have to throw it if you're the Vikings. Now, going over to running back, we're looking at Algier, Ramondre, Tracy, Charbonnet. We go with Ramondre now that he's good to go. Not excited about it at all. For the flex, we have Algier, Tracy, Sharp, Douglas, Addison. We go with Addison in a great matchup. Obviously, Charbonnet here if you were to have no Kenneth Walker. But if Kenneth Walker does play, then at that point, we'd probably go Christian Kirk. But really does matter of what you have in terms of the availability of Kenneth Walker. Because if you have no Walker, Charbonnet's probably a top 8 running back this week. Now, Grayson coming out says, Aaron Jones or Chase Brown, also considering Juju over Amari just for the week. 100%, I think you could go Juju over Amari if you wanted. I personally have Amari ranked higher in my rankings, but like I said, I wouldn't be that surprised if you get, say, a game with only 50% of the snaps played for Amari Cooper this week. And then looking at running back, I'm going to go Aaron Jones. Obviously, it is a very tough matchup here, but for him to get cleared this early, I think you can be not excited, but you have a receiving role, and I don't think you have to be that scared about him only playing 20, 30% of the snaps. I'd be a little more nervous if he was a game time decision. Now, Bobby coming out with the question says, happy BR flex start, Bucky, Sermon, or Wandale, assuming White's playing. You'll hate to hear it, but assuming White's playing, I go Sermon in the half PPR format. Full PPR league, I think you can go ahead and I think you could take Wandale. But I don't know. In a half PPR league, I think Wandale Robinson's a lot less exciting. Plus, you add in the fact, of course, that you have Malik Neighbors back in. Now, Zay coming out with a trade question. This is Nico Collins versus Brees. Oh, this Brees Hall, not even close. This would have been very close if Nico Collins was healthy. But with Nico Collins on the IR, being able to pivot over to a top 5 running back that is currently healthy, Brees is a very easy top 5 RB rest of season with the receiving usage, plus the fact that you are looking at this coaching staff kind of just taking out Braylon Allen completely in this offense. Now, J-Fan coming out with a trade question. Says, playing the Harrison owner this week. Terry is cooked, plus has the better matchup or better schedule. Why rest of season over Harrison? Big fan, Mason. Much love. Really do appreciate you. Now, I will say this week, I do prefer Terry McLaurin over Marvin Harrison Jr. But to be fair, if we do look at what you've had so far this season, if we're going to try to be objective about this between these two options, if we are looking at Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously I personally would want to take out week 1 as well. First NFL game ever, blah, blah, blah. I'll leave in week 1. But I think it's very safe to take out this past week. This past week, he plays 14% of the snaps. He gets injured immediately. But if you're looking at Harrison, you get 1 point, then 29 points, 17, 15, 5. If you look at what Terry's done this season, you get 3, 8, 20, 18, 13, 23. Like the points per game gap between these receivers, if you remove the game where Harrison gets out of this offense immediately, isn't that large. Plus, the same time, you add in that Harrison's a year 1 player. Terry McLaurin's 29? Are we expecting McLaurin to get better as the season goes on? Probably not. Whereas you're expecting the rookie to typically improve. I would rather have Harrison rest of season. This week, especially in a phenomenal matchup against the Carolina Panthers, you go Terry McLaurin. But I would rather have Harrison for the rest of the year. Now, Braid Nelson coming out. This is Jamar Chase versus Hunt, H.N. Metcalf. They're willing to offer DK or Evans. I traded Brees and Bijan for CMC, Chase, Mason. I think you go ahead and you hold on to Jamar Chase here. Like I'm viewing Kareem Hunt, low end RB2, high end RB3, rest of season. DK Metcalf, mid wide receiver 2. Devon H.N. mid RB1. But give me Jamar Chase. No downside with this. Just the elite wide receiver 1 season that we've had so far this season. We've had it over a large sample. Still incredibly young. So honestly, I think it's a very safe play to just go ahead and take Chase. Now, next question coming out from E. Hartley. Going for 7-0, but I have to play the Denver defense this week. Who are we starting? Tough. I have to play the Denver defense too. Luckily, I started Javonte, so it's not horrible, but don't love it, of course. But anyway, here, if we are looking at this, I would go ahead. I would probably play Tyreek over Dell and Ayuk. Down in the flex spot, I think you hope that Walker doesn't play so we can play Charbonnet. Because looking at what we have here specifically with Ayuk versus Dell, I think both players have a low floor but high ceiling. Both players have been very inconsistent so far. Obviously, Dell was better recently, and he looks exciting with the Nico Collins injury. If you look at my rankings, I have Dell at 42 and Ayuk 44 in the flex ranks this week. They're incredibly close. I think you do go Dell over Ayuk. It is a really tough spot. In a full BBR format, I'm definitely going to go with them over Hunt. But obviously, I want to do this if you had Nico Collins playing. Now, Sebastian coming out with a start sit question says, should I flex Cup, Dobbs, Mason, Charbonnet, Connor? Sadly, started Sutton, so my team needs some help. Thanks, G. Thank you. So we need to chase upside. For sure, playing Jordan Mason at running back. And then I'm assuming, so for the flex, we're going to go with Cooper Kupp. And then what's nice is obviously game time decision, but if Kupp doesn't play, then we could always just go through and play James Conner on Monday night. So plan A, Kupp, backup plan, Connor. Obviously, that's what the assumption we're getting to start Jordan Mason here at RB. And if we need to go with another wide receiver, it'd be Dell. But Heifer coming out. This is Baker, Connor versus Dak, Cook. Baker to Dak, downgrade. Connor to Cook, massive upgrade. Full BBR. This is a half BBR league, so maybe the receiving usage isn't going to matter as much. So, I mean, if we're looking at what you have here, I think most people probably prefer the Baker and Connor side, but for me, I still view like Baker and Dak as two quarterbacks that aren't must-start QBs every single week. I think that they're slightly better than waiver wire options, guys that you maybe want to hold two players on your roster and then play the matchups between the two of them. So, I don't know. I think it's a really tough spot. I would go with the best player. I would most likely go with James Cook. Obviously, if you're looking at raw points per game, the Baker side would be winning this. Just because if you are looking at Baker Mayfield's, he has been phenomenal so far this season. But at the same time, if I'm able to go pick up guys like Kirk Cousins off the waiver wire and play them in great matchups, I think week to week, I could get to a points per game mark with streaming quarterbacks like Cousins, Goff, Darnold, Caleb, that maybe is comparable to what you have with both of these guys like Dak and Baker here. Now let's move this over to our next question. This is coming out from K Bates. Here for the flex, if you have no Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet is an auto start. If Kenneth Walker does play, we probably go ahead and put in Tyler Algier. Good matchup. Should be the second highest scoring offense in the NFL this week, according to sportsbooks. Trying to think, you could possibly... If you have no Wicks, I think you go Dobbs. I'm an idiot. We have Josh Downs here. Never mind. We go Josh Downs. We lower our expectations with Downs, obviously, with Anthony Richardson under center, but I think plan is Josh Downs, pivot to Kenneth Walker. I'm sorry, pivot to Zach Charbonnet if Kenneth Walker is ruled out. But let me refresh this. Let me answer some of the free questions that we have in the live chat right now. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to try to get to as many as we can. Andrew hitting us with the Go Dogs. Yeah, congrats, Georgia fans. Georgia comes out, beats our Texas Longhorns. The life of a UT alum, a Texas X, is a life of disappointment. Not completely out this season so far. Obviously, we're still going to the playoffs, but would have been nice to win this. Kyler says, flex Chase Brown or Brian Thomas Jr. in a half PPR format. Probably going to go ahead and take Brian Thomas Jr. there. Don't want to sit here and act like it's the easiest spot in the world, but for me personally, I'm definitely viewing Brian Thomas Jr. as a player that has a really nice bounce back spot with an implied team total of 24 points for the Jags. Like, sportsbooks are giving the Jags more credit this week than they've had all season now. Motor City Bet says Tracy or Singletary. I would rather not start either running back in this backfield. Obviously, Tracy did look good without Singletary. This coaching staff is saying that Tracy will have an extended role in comparison to what he did at the beginning of the season. But for me personally, I would still go ahead and I would still relatively easily play Devin Singletary, to be honest with you. But if I could avoid them, I would. I would rather not play either guy. Okay. So moving this over. Zachary says, trade Collins for Tyreek. Yes, trade Collins for Tyreek. I mean, we got word that Tua should be back next week. Tua is back next week, obviously. I mean, all of a sudden, you should be extremely excited about Tyreek. Goes back to potentially being a top 3 receiver. Jonah says, if Walker doesn't play, Zach Charbonnet or James Conner. If Kenneth Walker doesn't play, go with Zach Charbonnet over Kenneth Walker. Not that hard either. And also, real quick, if you have not done so already, please go down there, drop a like on this live stream. Obviously, our Longhorns lose, but I'm going to be fine as long as our team beats Sal's team, if I'm going to be honest with you. That's all I really need. But yeah, hit that like button if you have not done so already, because it looks like less than 5% of y'all have actually done so. Caleb says Marv or Cup if Cup plays. Oh, definitely Cup if he plays. If Cup plays, Cup needs to be in your starting lineup. Last time we saw a Cooper Kupp play an entire game, he had 21 targets. Please make sure you get him in. Okay. Go Pat Go says McLaurin or Kittle in a full PPR format. Definitely go with McLaurin over the tight end. You're never wanting to flex the tight end, ever. Prince says, temper your expectations on Kupp. If you do not start Kupp this week, if he's good to go, you either are a certified crazy person or you have the best team of all time. If Kupp's good to go and you have him on your team, you put him in your lineup. T-Bomb says Aaron Jones or Trey Sermon. Tough matchup for Aaron Jones. Obviously, this Lions rush defense has crushed everybody they've gone up against. But Sermon's a bum. Aaron Jones, you should get some targets out of the backfield as well. So honestly, I think we go ahead. I think we take Aaron Jones here. Let's move this over. Cooler Ann says, Bigsby or the ROM? I am sadly having to start the ROM this week. I am not looking forward to it. I would not suggest it. But I would pretty easily say that if you have no ETN, you go Bigsby. If ETN plays, you go Ramondre. I think it's like a very clear black and white situation there. But let me move this over and get to the additional questions we have on the site. Looks like we only have about 8 questions submitted to the site right now. So if you got yours in, it should be answered super, super quick. And obviously, if you ever want to get a guaranteed answer with any of your questions, you can always go to flockfantasy.com or the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. And if you hit the button in the top right corner that says expert advice, you should be able to ask a start sit question, a trade question, send a super message, or get a team review, whatever you are wanting. I would highly recommend, of course, if you wanted a team review, to take advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tomorrow night. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live streams that we are doing every single day. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com after, or it doesn't matter when, but just with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I know who we need to go through into credit with that free team review voucher. But let's go ahead and let's move this over to our next question here. This is going to be from Bad News Bears. It says, dealing with some injuries. Got to fill out my wide receiver 2 in a flex. P.S. Got you whining in the flock league. Winning in the flock league. Okay, I was going to say. When I read it as got you whining, I was like, did you get a secret camera in my house or something? But nonetheless, thank you. Really do appreciate it. I really want to win the flock league this week. Y'all have no idea. This league I care more about than any league I've ever been winning games. So it takes up way too much of my mind. The amount of time in a day that I'm thinking about my team in the flock league, and specifically thinking about my matchup and my place in the standings, is embarrassingly high. But anyway, looking at wide receiver 2, not super excited about playing Amari his first weekend. There's a chance he only plays 50% of the snaps. Now, with that being said, I don't even know why I said Amari Cooper. It's Alan Lazard. Your boy maybe needs to get closer to the computer so I can read a little bit better. Because we're going to go ahead and we will take Ladd McConkey here, operating under the assumption, of course, that Ladd is good to go. If Ladd is good to go, it should be a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Going over to the flex, if you have no Brian Robinson, you would go ahead and you would play Austin Eckler. However, if Brian Robinson does play, then in that instance, you actually probably go ahead and pivot over to Juju Smith-Schuster. So playing as Juju, except if Brian Robinson is inactive, then we pivot over to Eckler. Sorry, the Texas loss has us a little bit shook here, Now, Prom Humst says, needing help determining quarterback in the flex spot. Thanks, Mason. Thank you so much, of course. Quarterback, 4-point passing touchdown league. I probably go ahead. I probably take Anthony Richardson. I'm assuming that Tua is on our IR, but if we're rostering A-Rich, Geno, and Fields, probably time to just go ahead and let go of Fields. And going down to what we have with the flex, I think we go James Conner. And if you were really worried about the matchup that you had against the Chargers, you could pivot to Brandon Ayuk. Now, 3 coming out with a start-sit question. Here, quarterback, it's going to be Rodgers, Kyler. We are going to go with Kyler over Rodgers. Both have a tough matchup. Kyler does get some rushing upside. Sportsbooks are saying the Cardinals offense should be higher scoring as well. We're going to go with Brian Thomas and what should be a bounce back spot here for Thomas. And then going down to the flex, we are looking at Chase Brown, Bucky, Braylon Allen. I think you play Chase Brown here. I mean, if you are looking at Chase Brown, this is a running back in which he takes over as the starter. It's a game where the Bengals are heavily favored, where they should be able to run the ball in the second half. You've seen the explosive plays. We had the usage as a receiver as well, and the usage in the red zone. So I think you should have the high value opportunities for Chase Brown. But let's move this over to our next question. It's coming out from Foley Sean. Here, this is a starting lineup with 3 flex spots. Right now, we're rolling out Leggett. Would rather not do so. I don't know exactly what you're asking. Maybe if you're asking that we only need 1 flex, The guy that I'd start out of Juju, Leggett, Douglas, I would go Juju 1, Douglas 2, Leggett 3. Obviously, we're leaving the rest of the starting lineup as is. Do we have another quarterback interest from and another tight ends? No. So, yeah, I think you go plans Juju 1, Douglas 2, Leggett 3. Now, Vodev coming out says, am I overthinking it considering Bigsby because he's against the Pats D? You are 100% overthinking it. You go David Montgomery. I mean, with Montgomery, obviously it's a much, much tougher matchup, but he's in a much better offense. You've had receiving usage. You've had a ton of red zone opportunities so far. Yeah, so don't overthink it that much. Please go through and play Montgomery. And then going down to what we have in the flex. I think you go with either Achane or Ayuk, and I probably take Achane. If you look at sports books right now, they are giving a total of, I believe, 20.5 points here for this Miami Dolphins offense. So they are saying that it should be a better Dolphins offense than what we had seen in the past. Obviously not a guarantee by any means, but I think you can go with them. Now, moving this over to our next question, we got Ginger Baby. Here, this is Tracy Swift, Chris Godwin. I definitely pivot over to Godwin. I don't view Tracy really as anything at this point. With Singletary coming back in, yeah, he'll probably have a role, but he's going to be in a committee. I'm excited about Tyron Tracy in a split backfield in a Giants offense. No. DeAndre Swift just has an absolute brutal, and I mean brutal schedule going into the future. So pivoting over to Godwin, where it looks like he is that consistent wide receiver one rest of season, I think you probably just have to do it. Okay. Now moving over to our next question. This is also from Ginger Baby. This is Swift Tracy versus May and Leggett. I'm assuming that this is a dynasty league. Ginger Baby, can you let me know in the live chat, is this a dynasty format? Because if this is a dynasty superflex league, it's Drake May and Xavier Leggett easily. If it is a regular redraft league, it is DeAndre Swift easily. But they'd be so far off that I don't even know what worlds that this question could exist. So, yeah. I'm going to mark this as the Swift side's a winner. But if it's a Superflex Dynasty League, please go ahead and take Drake May and Leggett. But Jinx Dog coming out with a massive dono. Really appreciate you, my guy. Going to be excited to check this out. Also, let me hook you up with a free trade question and a free start sit question. If you have any more questions about this team that you want to send my way as well, you should be able to do that with the free vouchers on the site. But anyway, it says, need upgrade at running back and don't know who to put in at the flex. So team name here is Touchdown Syndrome. Here, looking at us in the league analyzer, we are fourth. This is a league, however, that you are going up against a straight up juggernaut here. You are having to play the team at one that has Barkley, Achane, Jacobs, Connor, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels. This is going to be a really, really tough situation. Now, our team's not too bad. We are fourth in the league analyzer. But we do have some news from Shefty. We'll get to the updated Shefty news in a bit, which sounds very bad for me. But anyway, it's a 10-team league in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. Probably a situation in which we don't need the depth. And if we can make 2-for-1 deals, get improvements inside the starting lineup, we should go ahead and look to do just that. But looking at quarterback, we are currently rolling with Allen. Josh Allen should be, a top 5 QB rest of season. You already have the rushing upside. But now that you have Amari coming in as well, the passing volume should maybe be a little bit more consistent. Now going over to what we have at running back. We have DeAndre Swift, Jordan Mason. So looking at Swift, obviously, he's been an absolute crusher. I am very worried about the schedule in the future. Jordan Mason, he has been a crusher as well. I'm very much worried about what you have if CMC potentially comes back in the future. But we're not concerning ourselves too much about the fantasy football playoffs here. And instead, the main thing that we need to be thinking about is how we win games right now on a 2-4 roster. So I actually look to hold on to both these RBs. Going over to wide receiver, we have A.J. Brown, Harrison, Wilson, McLaurin, Flowers, Juju. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So when we have this many viable receivers, I would love, if possible, to make a 2-for-1 deal and go ahead and upgrade at the running back position. Like if we can find some teams in our league that need some help at receiver, like this team right now is having to start Waddle and Brandon Ayuk. If we could go get Brian Robinson by like potentially selling Nick Chubb, Terry McLaurin, or Rico Dowdle, Zay Flowers, sending those 2 pieces to go get to Brian Robinson in a league where depth, it just doesn't matter at all. I think that would make a ton of sense. We can go ahead and we can look at some potential other trades. I don't like trading for McCaffrey here, obviously, with our roster, just given the fact that we are currently sitting at 2-4. We don't have enough value probably to go ahead and trade for Derrick Henry. So that team, probably Brian Robinson's really the only guy that we can go after. This team here, their wide receiver 3 right now is maybe like Romeo Doubs. The issue is, like, could we get to Breece Hall some way? Could we sell DeAndre Swift and Garrett Wilson, DeAndre Swift and Marvin Harrison, and go get to Breece Hall? If so, I would absolutely love to make that 2-for-1 move. Going over, they also have George Kittle. So one thing you could consider is maybe we try to sell like Flowers and Ferguson and get to Kittle just in a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league where Flowers like our 6th receiver on the roster. You should just reasonably be able to go out there and get some value out of them. Going over to what we have with another team that potentially needs help. This team has the Puka Nacua injury, so their wide receiver 2 right now is Jerry Jeudy. They have Mixon and Pollard at running back that we could possibly get to. Like if you could go through and sell like DeAndre Swift, Zay Flowers, DeAndre Swift, Terry McLaurin, or Jordan Mason with one of those running backs to pivot over to Joe Mixon, given the fact that this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. I think I would love to make that pivot. Going over to what we have with the flex options, you have Keenan Allen that we can pick up for free, Zach Charbonnet that we can pick up for free. So if you were to make a 2-for-1 deal, honestly, what I would probably do if you open up a roster spot is I think I would more likely than not be looking to pick up Zach Charbonnet as the running back that's an injury away from turning into a 3-down bell cow. Whereas if you're going to be looking at what you have, say, with Keenan Allen, he's just another kind of meaningless wide receiver depth piece here in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So I like the team. I think we have a ton of value. Just the main thing is, specifically with these league settings, what you are needing to do is you are needing to go through and sell one of the depth receivers and try to get a significant upgrade at either running back or tight ends. While at the same time, you'd be able to reasonably expect that you can pick up an exciting option off the waiver wire if you did do that. But I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Again, I sent you over that free team review voucher. I'm sorry, that free start set question voucher and that free trade review voucher. So if you have anything else that you want to send my way, please don't hesitate to. I'd be happy to check it out. But let me pull up the update that we have from Adam Scheffner, because I know that some people in the chat were saying that Shefty tweeted out something and maybe it is relevant and it just freaking sucks for us, dear God. Okay, we have a bunch of Shefty tweets here. Chiefs Juju Smith-Schuster listed as questionable for Sunday due to hamstring injury, is expected to play versus the Niners. So if you wanted to go Juju, you can. Would I be super excited about it? Probably not. Colts wide receivers, Pittman and Downs, and Alec Pierce are all good to go for the Dolphins. I'm rolling out Anthony Richardson this week in the Flock League. So, I mean, probably better than not having these receivers for us. Deontay Johnson is expected to play against the Commanders. I don't think anybody thought that he actually wasn't. I'm at this point just convinced Deontay Johnson hates going to practice. Brian Robinson is expected to play versus the Panthers. So if we are looking at Brian Robinson, he'll be an absolute must-start running back, an RB1 here, an absolute no-brainer. The Commanders project to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Now, this freaking sucks for me because I have to play against Brian Robinson this week in the Flock League, and I think I am just about to get crushed. And when I say crushed, I mean crushed. Shetty says, as skeptical as some might be, sources believe Hutchinson will have a realistic chance to return for the Super Bowl if Detroit is able to advance that far. These headlines like this, just a quick side note. This is the equivalent of my girlfriend coming to me and telling me the new celebrity couple that I need to pay attention to. It's completely irrelevant. There's no way this actually happens. It's clickbait. It's to get people talking about something that doesn't matter. Hutchinson's not coming back this year. Like, this is it's literally just for attention. I have no idea why you would even tweet that out, to be honest. So yeah, and then we can go through a couple of these. We already talked about this at the very top, but after Devontae Adams was dealt to the Jets, apparently a couple teams have reached out regarding Garrett Wilson, and Ramondre Stevenson is expected to play as well. But I think that should be it for those updates. Obviously, if we get any more, I'll let you know. Well, let me refresh, see if we have any more questions on the site. Of course, if you wanted to get in any questions over there on flockfantasy.com, you can always go through and you can always hit the button in the live chat that says ask a question here, or you could always go over to flockfantasy.com and hit the expert advice button in the top right corner. There you're able to send in a super message, a start sit question, a trade question, a team review, whatever you are wanting to do. If you did want that team review, I'd highly recommend using the promo that we have over on Underdog Fantasy, or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy with the link in the live chat and use promo code FLOCK, you'll get that 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll get the free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tomorrow. And on top of that, you are going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog account. That way I know who we should hook up with that free team review. But let me move over to our next question here. This is, and I think we only have 9 questions to get through. So if you get in your question, it should be answered very soon. But Pet Frog, this is a start set here at running back. We have no Taylor. I think you have to go Connor and Achane with Kareem Hunt. I'm not worried that you were going to have, say, Clyde Edwards-Helaire turning into the starting RB, but I am potentially a little concerned if you were going to have, say, Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming in and seeing 20-30% of this backfield. Going down to the flex, Hunt, Taylor, Amari, Kupp, Debo, Devonta Smith. If Kupp's good to go, I'm playing Cooper Kupp. If Kupp isn't, obviously you can pivot over to Debo Samuel. Kind of no harm, no foul. But if Kupp is good, or right now he has game time decision, I don't think we've had any updates tonight on him. We would plan on playing Cooper Kupp. Okay. Now, Bonehead coming out with a super chat. Says, hey, Mason, this is a happy PR where we have Tank Bigsby, Demario Douglas, Wan'Dale Robinson, or Devin Singletary. Thank you. No, thank you. Here, I would rather have Douglas over Wan'Dale. I would honestly probably rather have Singletary over both in a half PPR format, though. Obviously, full PPR league, the cheap targets that you're going to get going in the direction of Demario Douglas and going in the direction of Wan'Dale Robinson, they are a little bit more appealing. But happy PPR format, we go Singletary. Unless ETN were to miss, then at that point, I think you could pivot over to Tank Bigsby instead. Now, Michael coming out with a start set question. Here says, need help in deciding what to do if Kenneth Walker sits. And planning wide receiver / flex options. Appreciate all you do. Appreciate you, my friend. Here, if Kenneth Walker does miss, Josh Jacobs, no harm, no foul. You just go ahead and plug in Jacobs. Wide receiver, Godwin, obviously must start name here. Flex, we will go with Jacobs. We'll go Diggs at the other flex. So if Kenneth Walker does not play, then at that point, you're going to go ahead and you're actually going to be moving Josh Jacobs into that RB slot. And then you would go with Devontae Adams as a fill-in for the flex there. Now, Yak's season coming out says 2-4 with the most points scored against me. Need a win now. I know Tua comes back soon, but is this good? Going from Jacobs to Walker, clear upgrade. Tyreek to London, clear downgrade. We get the confirmation that Tua is going to be at practice this week and is eyeing a return next week. So to be honest with you, if we didn't get that blurb from Ian Rappaport, I would probably say that with this deal, it makes sense for you to just go ahead and for you to play it safe and just go with Drake London and Kenneth Walker. But now that we're already getting told, hey, Tua's probably going to be back next week, which, I mean, was kind of the expected timeline as well, to be honest. I would probably rather just prefer going ahead and starting Kenneth Walker. I'm sorry, not starting Kenneth Walker in London this week, obviously, but taking the Tyreek Hill side rest of season. Because once Tua is back in, Tyreek Hill goes back to being the wide receiver 1 or 2 in fantasy. Now, Josh coming out with a start sit question. Says, hey, Mason, love the content and hope you win the Flock League. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know who to start. All right, let's go ahead and let's pull this up. Jacobs, not the best matchup, but clearly a must start back in a good offense that's seeing a 3-down workload. Have to get Jacobs in every single week. Going over to what we have at wide receiver, I think we're going to go with Evans now that he is fully healthy. We're going to go with Terry McLaurin as well, and what projects to be the best offense in the NFL this week. Tight end, we are going to be going with Evan Ingram over Laporta, with Laporta having a really tough matchup against the Vikings. And then down in the flex spot, I think this is a tough spot between Devonta Smith and Garrett Wilson. I think here you can probably say that we want to be benching Aaron Jones, given the fact that Aaron Jones just has an absolute brutal matchup going up against the Lions, and at the same time, he's coming off of the hamstring. So for me, I would go ahead and I would honestly take Devonta Smith here. I mean, with Smith, you have no Dallas Goedert, so you should get a few more targets over the middle. Now, going over to our next question, it's coming out from Jinja Baby. Says, just had 2 trades reviewed, 12-team, 1 quarterback dynasty format. So this is Godwin or Leggett in May. If you're a contending team, the Godwin side. If you're a rebuilding team, the Leggett side. 1 quarterback dynasty league, not really caring too much about Drake May. But obviously, you can make an argument that, on a rebuilding roster, Leggett is going to be able to come out, and Leggett is going to be a really strong option. But yeah, if you are a contending team, there's no reason to be moving on from Godwin, where Godwin isn't super old either. And he was drafted way back in 2017. But like in comparison to Kupp, he was like 3 years younger than Cooper Kupp at the time of the draft. And now, B Cosmo says, would my team be better with this deal? My team's linked. I'm 2-4. Can't afford to lose. 100% understand. And looking at the roster, we have Jacobs and Chase Brown at running back. I mean, we have True Bobbert in the short term. We have 3 potential wide receiver ones. I think you go ahead. I think you take Kenneth Walker. I'm viewing Kenneth Walker as a borderline top 5 running back rest of season, where you're getting the consistency from Kenneth Walker, even in the games where you have a ridiculous amount of dropbacks from Geno Smith, where Kenneth Walker is getting the usage as a receiver. So I think that there are very few players in fantasy football at this point that I would prefer over Kenneth Walker. Now, Jake coming out with a trade question. So, hey, Mason, I'm looking to move my first rounder on and go back to back. Would you trade it for Brooks? Hell no. You hold on to 2025 first over Jonathan Brooks. If Brooks comes in and he starts producing, then sure, at that point, we can go ahead and look to make this pivot. But the thing is, you're not even guaranteed that Jonathan Brooks will help you contend this year. And I know what kind of value the first round pick will have next season, where we simply don't with Jonathan Brooks right now. So I would for sure keep the first. If you're a contending team and you needed some running back production to try to win this year, I'm okay selling your first round pick, but I think you need to get back a player that we're confident is going to be able to help you contend. And I'm not confident with Brooks in doing so. Okay. But let's move this over to, this is Sky Kindle. Going to be really excited to check this team out for you. Thank you so much, of course, for supporting the channel. Let me hook you up with a trade question as well as a start sit question as well. These are free vouchers on the site. So if you wanted to submit a trade question or start sit question, you can send it my way for free. But this is Shane's Agarthan Super Soldiers. I'm sorry if I can't read. But anyway, how can I make my team better? It's a 5-1 10-team league with friends. How can I close the gap between me and the little gay monkeys? And should I flex Garrett Wilson, Deontay, or Jordan Mason? Thanks. Thank you. And I will say that team at 1 definitely has the best team in this league if you are looking at the league analyzer. Now, luckily, we have the best record here, I believe. But yeah, we're actually 3rd in the league analyzer as well. Brady's is up here with Barkley, HN, Chase. The team at 1 has St. Brown, Neighbors, Cup, Kyron, Walker. So these are really strong teams. Now, with that being said, this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 10-team league. So depth is not going to matter much at all. You are highly incentivized to just go for the best players that we can get, the highest ceiling we can have, and not really care about wide receiver depth, especially. But anyway, looking at what we have at quarterback, we have Lamar and Baker. Obviously, with Lamar, we're starting him every single week, regardless of matchup. Puts you in a little bit of an awkward spot because with Baker Mayfield, he's too good to drop, but he's not good enough to reasonably be able to trade for anything in a 10-team league in particular. So probably not looking to do anything here. At quarterback, I mean, a Baker comes through and yet again just puts up a ridiculous performance when it comes to the Monday night game with everybody watching. And then all of a sudden you actually can sell Baker Mayfield in a 2-for-1 deal for an upgrade elsewhere. Then we do it. But it's just much, much easier said than done in a 10-team league to sell Baker. Like, you're probably not going to be able to. Now, going over to running back, we have Kamara, who's top 10 RBs, so an RB1 in this format. We have Jordan Mason, who gives us the production in the short term. Long term, maybe we are not super excited about this. But what we could look to do here is you actually could look to trade for another running back like Christian McCaffrey from a team that needs wins right now. Whereas obviously we are in a very comfortable situation in which you're able to go through and you're able to plan for the long term as a 5-1 roster. We don't need to worry as much about just getting points in right this second. So if we could go through and find one of these teams at the bottom with McCaffrey, or maybe even Jonathan Taylor, right? This team with JT is 2-4, and they possibly need points in their lineup right now. So if you could potentially go through and send a 2-for-1 deal where we sell a running back and a receiver and go get the player with the upside like Jonathan Taylor, I think it make a lot of sense for our roster where we're sitting here at 5-1. So, like, I would love to see if we could sell Amari Cooper and J.K. Dobbins, go get Jonathan Taylor here in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Is our biggest priority is not how do we have the best regular season. It's okay, how do we put ourselves in a position to compete with this number 1 team by the time we get to the fantasy football playoffs? And another added bonus that you would get from selling like Amari and Dobbins or Deontay and Dobbins to go get 2 JT is you would open another roster spot in which you could go ahead and pick up somebody like Jonathan Brooks or Rome Odunze for completely free off the waiver wire as well, which would be really exciting. Going over to receiver, naturally, if we can make 2-for-1 tier up deals here, that is going to be something we would look to do as well. Maybe if you can find a Tyreek Hill team that's a little bit disappointed with Tyreek and not willing to wait in another week until Tua is back in. And if we could potentially go through and trade for Tyreek Hill with this team, they are 2-4. If you could potentially send them like, say, Deebo Samuel and Amari Cooper, go get Tyreek Hill, then trade Deontay Johnson, J.K. Dobbins, go get Jonathan Taylor. Put yourself in a situation where in the fantasy playoffs, we're starting Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, and Garrett Wilson by selling our wide receiver depth and the productive pieces right now. And then we could open up multiple roster spots and pick up Jonathan Brooks and Rome Odunze for free. I think that those are naturally the moves that we are looking to make with this team. Going over to tight end, we're fine. We're not great, but we're fine. I think the very easy thing to say with this roster is what we are wanting to do is we are wanting to go through, trade the assets that we have as short-term depth pieces that are producing right now and see if we can pivot over to the players that are dealing with injuries that have the elite ceilings for the long term. In my mind, I think that would be very exciting. And then in terms of the waiver wire pivots, there aren't really any players that we can drop here. I love the names on the waiver wire. Like, I would love picking up Rome Odunze. I would love picking up Jonathan Brooks. But again, realistically, you just can't drop anybody unless you were to make that 2-for-1 deal. So that's what I would be looking to do. I know, obviously, people in the chat are saying, no, don't take Jonathan Taylor. He's injured. Obviously, you're not going to be able to trade for elite players regularly. You have to trade for the distressed assets right now, where people in the chat are going, oh, don't trade for him. Don't trade for him. He's hurt. We're 5-1. We're only caring about the fantasy football playoffs here. I think that's what we're looking at. But thank you again. I really do hope I was able to help you out in some way here, my friend. And really hope you're able to get something from this. But let's go ahead and let's refresh this. See if we have any more questions here. We have 6 more questions. So again, if you wanted to get in a question over there on flockfantasy.com with the Ask a Question Here link, or just going over and hitting that expert advice button in the top right corner, it should be answered almost immediately. But Joyboy J says, don't know who to start at running back 2, wide receiver 2, and flex. We are 0-6. If you are 0-6, RIP, you lose one more week. I'd say it's time to pack it in. You fall to 0-7. Obviously, I never want to tell anybody this, but you fall to 0-7, and it's maybe time to start scouting your fantasy football options for 2025. But anyway, pulling this up. Our best option on the bench that we could possibly get in here would be Brian Thomas. I don't think you need to start Brian Thomas over Devon Achane. I think I would start him over Ayuk. Assuming the weather's not too bad in London, I would go with Brian Thomas over Ayuk. You actually, which is crazy to say, but sportsbooks right now are actually giving you a higher implied team total with the Jacksonville Jaguars than you have with the San Francisco 49ers this week, which obviously is very surprising, but so I think you go ahead. I think you take Brian Thomas, and then we leave everything else as is. Now, M. Schuster coming out with a start set. Here at running back, we are going to go through. We're going to play Brian Robinson now that he's good to go. Obviously, we're going to play Derrick Henry as well. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead and play Malik Neighbors. Should be fully cleared. We're going to go Tyreek Hill. You won't have Tua this week, but you potentially have Tua back next week. Tight ends, Tucker Kraft, and then in the 2 flex spots, brutal. I think you probably end up going with Ladd McConkey, and then your call between Nick Chubb, Juju, and Josh Downs. Downs has been cleared. Downs is good to go. So has Juju, though. Can y'all spam the chat? Who would you start between Nick Chubb, Josh Downs, Juju Smith-Schuster? Please spam the live chat. Nick Chubb, Josh Downs, or Juju Smith-Schuster. Who are you going with this week? Tracy, do not start Tracy. Chubb, Juju, Jameson. You could go Jameson if you want. Juju, Downs, Jameson, Juju. Juju, Downs, Juju. Sounds like most people are on Juju here. I think you can. My issue with Jameson and why I'm not super excited to play Jameson this week is, 1, it's a horrendous matchup going up against the Vikings. And 2, you sprinkle on the fact that the man's averaging 3 targets a game over the past 3 weeks. So realistically speaking, it's a long touchdown or a bust at this point. And I don't know how likely you are to get the long touchdown. in this environment in particular. Now, Austin coming out here, running back. We are going to go ahead. Eckler can't play now that Brooks good to go. Oh, dear. Actually, never mind. This running back room's horrendous. We're going to go with Madison, and if Rachaad White plays, you go White. If he doesn't, you go with Eckler. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Deontay Johnson and Cooper Kupp there in the flex. But super strong wide receiver room to have just a garbage running back room here. But BHZ says 6-0, already made this trade. Terry for Amari after this one. Did I sell? We also have Pacheco on IR. Terry versus Amari. I think you go Terry at this point. Dowdle to CMC, massive upgrade. Metcalf to Adams, lateral move. Evans to Worthy, massive downgrade. So we can effectively say maybe Dowdle to Worthy, slight upgrade. Evans to CMC, slight downgrade. 6-0, it makes sense. 6-0, where at that point, we're really only thinking about what you have for right this second in nothing beyond. I'm sorry, not the exact opposite. You're only thinking about the fantasy football playoffs, and you don't need to worry about what's going on right this second. I think there it's a spot where we have the luxury where we can go ahead and we can trade for Christian McCaffrey. Now, let's move this over to our next question that's coming out from Jay Shaw. Say trade question here. Says, is this a good deal? Team is now Kyler, Kamara, Montgomery, Chase, London, Harrison, Crafter, Hawk. Flex would be Lad. Seems like a great team, but Brown to Kamara, lateral trade. Connor to Harrison, give me Harrison. Douglas to Lad, give me Lad. Myers to Hawkinson, give me Hawkinson. So yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll take the Kamara side. Stuff that I'm like super excited to go through and trade AJ Brown for Alvin Kamara. But more so that I'm excited for the secondary upgrades that we have here. Now, Joel coming out with a start set. Here at running back, we're going to go ahead. We'll play Aaron Jones. Don't love it because of the matchup. And the wide receiver, we're going to go ahead. We will take Marvin Harrison Jr., where he's already been cleared. He's been at practice all week here. So I think you can't play him. But let me refresh this, see if we have any more questions. Can't believe we've been live for 3 hours. But Dread Raga coming out says, I have Rachaad White and Bucky. Should we grab Eckler with my waiver wire priority? Not that Brian Robinson's good to go. Now that Brian Robinson's good to go, I don't know what world we're playing Eckler here. Like, even if you wanted to play him over Rachaad White or say Bucky Irving, it's marginal at best. So no, I think you just roll with White and Bucky. I want to pick up Eckler. Now, Resmac coming out with a big time donor. Really appreciate you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a free trade question voucher and a free start sit question voucher as well. But it says, I'm currently 1-5, but it's frustrating because I'm missing Puka since week 1, and Achane, who hasn't had Tua, and Reed, who didn't have Love for a bit. I recently traded Amari for Marvin on Wednesday, but I'm wondering who we should start this week. Appreciate y'all, brother. Appreciate you. Team name here is Your Mom's Bedroom. We are 7th in the league analyzer. Yeah, we are significantly worse than these other top 6 teams as well in terms of value. The first thing that I want to say is obviously it absolutely sucks having the Puka Nacua injury. Super unlucky. But with that being said, you can't go through and continue to roster Puka here on a 1-5 team. Obviously, we're not dropping him. But if we could sell Puka and get somebody significant in, 100% we are wanting to do that. Like if you could sell, say, Puka Nacua in a 2-for-1 deal with Tank Dell and get to a wide receiver that we are very excited about, and that's going to give us production in the short term, then let's do it. Like if you can go Puka and Dell and somehow get to like the Mike Evans range and get somebody that can help us not fall to 1 and 6, that's the number one priority that you have at this point. So I think you have to approach the teams that are 5-1, 4-2, hype them up a bit. Say, hey, you're going to the fantasy football playoffs. You could use Puka. I need wins right now. Talk down on your own team. Say my team's garbage. I'm 1-5. Maybe get them excited. Maybe think them, oh yeah, I am great. Maybe I could use Puka in the playoffs. I think we can try to hype them up on that. Would be a potential good spot for us. Quarterback, we have Hurts. Obviously, Hurts dealt with the A.J. Brown as well as the Devonta Smith injuries. So Hurts wasn't great early in the year, but I think Jalen Hurts should be much better going into the future. He's already through his bye week as well, so definitely don't need to roster another quarterback. I think we are completely fine here. Going over to what we have at running back, we currently have Bijan Robinson. So 3-down back, they're able to start every single week, regardless of matchup. We have Achane. Now that we get official word that Tua is coming back in next week, or he'll be at practice and possibly going to be playing, I think he'll play. I think you actually don't sell Achane. I think, honestly, with all the injuries that this team was dealing with initially, I would have sold Achane the second that Tua got injured. If y'all remember, we had him as a sell high candidate, and people threatened to end me because of it. And then we have really no running back depth beyond this. Now, we are rostering a ridiculous amount of receivers, which typically I'm not a fan of. I will say, though, it is a league in which you can start 4 wide receivers weekly. So the wide receiver depth maybe does matter just a little bit more here. But we have Harrison, Jaden Reed, specifically in a 10-team format, both probably wide receiver 2s in the long term. We have Puka Nacua with long-term playoff upside, but in terms of what you're going to be getting right now, realistically, just nothing. So I definitely love to sell Puka in a combo with Dell, in a combo with Downs to go try to get an upgrade right now. Looking at the options that you have on the waiver wire as well, I mean, we're rostering so many receivers here. We even have at the very bottom of this Demario Douglas. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 receivers. In comparison to 3 running backs, we're rostering 3 tight ends as well. I think the first thing that I do with this team, other than trying to sell Puka and getting an upgrade right now, is I think you cut Demario Douglas. I think you cut Hunter Henry, and we go through and we actually pick up a couple running backs off the waiver wire here. I mean, going through and looking at Devin Singletary, I think Singletary is a very clear pickup if possible. I think Jalen Warren as well. With Jalen Warren, if you were to get an injury to Najee Harris, he probably becomes a must-start player. So I would cut Douglas. I'd pick up Devin Singletary. I'd cut Hunter Henry. I'd pick up Jalen Warren. I'd do that right this second. I would try to sell Puka in a 2-for-1 deal with like Tank Dell to get to a wide receiver that we're more excited about playing. Obviously, tight end after we cut Henry, we're going to be left over with Kincaid and Njoku, which we are fine with, of course. I don't want to act like it's the most exciting tight end room in the world. But in terms of who we start in this lineup this week as well, we're going to start Bijan Achane at running back. Wide receiver, we're going to go Harrison Reed. For our 2 flex spots, we're going to go with Dell and either Wandale, Juju, or Downs, up to you. And then tight end, we're going to be going with Dalton Kincaid. But yeah, please try to sell Puka, make those waiver wire moves that we are talking about as well. But really do appreciate you. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way. And of course, I accredited your account with a free trade question as well as a free start sit question as well. So you're more than welcome to send over any of those that you have for me. Now, KV24 coming out with our next question. Here, quarterback, we have Jordan Love. Running back, James Cook. Devon Achane. Wide receiver, we have Ayuk, St. Brown. Tight end, we have Kraft. And then flex, we have Ramondre Stevenson. If we were to pivot off anything, it would be I want to get Ramondre out of here, but there's no way I can play like Tyler Algier over him. Tight end, I'm playing Tuck Craft over Andrews for sure. So honestly, I think we leave this lineup as is. Obviously helps us a ton that James Cook is good to go this week. But I see people in the chat talking about a Sutton trade. The Broncos are 4-3. What makes you think they're trading Sutton? Sutton ain't getting dealt. I think DeAndre Hopkins is way more likely to get dealt than Cortland Sutton is. Let's refresh this. We have a team review coming out from K. Diego. We'll be excited to check this out for you, my friend. I do want to remind everybody, this is actually the only question that we have in the queue right now. So if you do send a question over through flockfantasy.com, will get answered pretty much immediately. You can find that link in the live chat, or you can just go over to flockfantasy.com. You can hit the expert advice button in the top right corner. There, if you do that, it'll take you to the team review, trade question, start sit question, super message page. You can get any one of these. Now, if you wanted a team review, what I would recommend is I'd recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy, which you can find that link in the live chat, and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard, and a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog account. That way I know who to credit with that free team review voucher. And also, if you wanted something to pair up with that free Aaron Rodgers pick, I'd be looking at Ayuk to have fewer than 61.5 receiving yards and Montgomery to have more than 61.5 total yards. But moving this team review over for Kate P. Diego says, what could I bundle to get a better running back? So this is an 8-team league in which we are only starting 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. So this is a league in which depth does not matter in the slightest, while at the same time, we are going to have phenomenal options on the waiver wire. So right now we are 4th in this league analyzer. We are currently sitting at 3-3. Pulling this up, you can see how good the waiver wire options are in this league, where you have somebody like Jalen Waddle, you have Jake Ferguson, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, you have Jamison Williams, you have all these guys out there on waivers. So in general, the trade that we are always looking to make in a league like this is we are selling 2 pieces for 1. We're selling the 2 depth guys, trying to get an upgrade inside the starting lineup. And then we're going to turn around and we are actually just going to be looking at grabbing a potential fill-in off of the waiver wire. Like an example of this is if we were to go through and if we were to sell J.K. Dobbins and Mike Evans and pivot over to a running back, say like David Montgomery, pivot over to, and just as an example, I don't necessarily think that's somebody you need to go after, but pivot over to a running back like David Montgomery, pivot over to a running back like, say, Josh Jacobs. It may seem like you're overpaying on the surface, trading like, say, Chuba Hubbard, Mike Evans for Josh Jacobs. But if you could pick up Jalen Waddle off the waiver wire for free, then instead it's like, oh no, I'm trading away, say, Mike Evans and Chuba Hubbard for Josh Jacobs and Jalen Waddle. So you can afford to quote unquote overpay for the options down there at the bottom ends. At the top end of teams, because at the bottom end of your roster, you can backfill with those viable flex plays. Now, looking at what we have at quarterback, we have Josh Allen. Looking at Allen, top 5 quarterback, rest of season, no hesitation, have had the rushing upside. Now, at the same time, you get Amari coming in, so maybe the passing volume is a little bit more consistent. Now, I would be very excited about Josh Allen as my QB1 in a 12-team league. Specifically here in an 8-team league, it's not as strong. Still definitely strong, just not as big of a deal. Now, going over to what we have, say, with our running back room. This is a running back room with all the depth, but this is a running back room with really no top end talent, which is the main concern. So what we are wanting to do is we are wanting to try our best to move off of the names such as Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison, Terry McLaurin, and 2-for-1 deals where we could potentially sell, say, Terry McLaurin, J.K. Dobbins, go get the best running back that you possibly can, and then pick up Jalen Waddle for free off the waiver wire. And honestly, even with these depth backs, if you could turn around and sell Najee Harris and Dalton Kincaid and a 2-for-1 deal to go get Trey McBride and get the top end tight end, it's a no-brainer because you can go pick up Jonathan Brooks off the waiver wire for free afterwards. So it's very, like, the strategy in this league is very, very easy. And to be completely honest with you, this is why I don't really like 8-team leagues. And if you are playing in an 8-team league, I think you should incorporate a bunch of extra flex spots in it, so it makes it where depth is a little bit more important. But specifically here, like with these league settings, you're in a situation in which really the only thing that you could ever do is sell the depth to try to get that upgrade and to backfill with the great waiver options. And every opportunity that you get to do just that is one that we need to take and we need to run for the hills with. But I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Of course, I also hooked you up with the free trade question and the free start sit question vouchers on the site as well. So if you ever wanted to send anything like that over to me, you should have a free voucher for both. But I appreciate you. Hope I was able to help you out. And yeah, thank you so much. But let's refresh this. I think we maybe had a couple more questions coming into the stream. This is Napoleon Diggs coming out with a free Underdog team review. Going to be excited to check this out for you. This is CD's Nuts, which I believe is the 5th team in the League Analyzer, which is a top 5 team. I'm sorry, not, I don't want to say which is the top 5 team. Obviously, it's a top 5 team. But if you look at the top 5 teams, according to the League Analyzer here, they are really in a group of their own where you have a significant drop-off after our team to the next best one. Like in terms of these points, which are arbitrary, but it's just trying to put a baseline value on your roster. We have about 5,000 more points than the team behind us, where we're only about 3,000 points off from the team at 1. So obviously, strong team. We are in the little group of juggernaut rosters here. But going ahead, pulling up our team, we are currently sitting at 3-3. It is a league in which we can start up to 9 players. So I'm assuming that this is a 3 wide receiver, 2 flex formats. So here, with that in mind, we really want to be prioritizing wide receiver depth. This league could not be more different than the league that we just looked at right before this. Quarterback, we are currently sitting with Kyler Murray as well as Dak Prescott. Obviously, sitting here with Kyler, you have the rushing upside. Quarterback's honestly not going to matter as much in this league as it would in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Because in a league like this, it's just a situation where quarterbacks are going to make up a smaller percentage of our starting lineup output weekly in comparison to a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. So quarterback, I think we are just fine here. I don't really think you need to make any adjustments. Going over to what you have at running back, we have Mixon and David Montgomery. So 2 potential RB1s rest of season. We have Kareem Hunt, Bucky Irving, Tyler Algier. So quality running back depth. With this being a full PPR league where we can start, I believe, 3 wide receivers and 2 flex spots. If you could get a great price for David Montgomery, where if you could pivot off of Montgomery and look at a mid wide receiver one, like if you could go Montgomery for Tyreek Hill, it's just an absolute no-brainer here whatsoever. Or if you can trade Montgomery for any of the top 8 wide receivers in our rankings, I think you go for it. Going over to receiver, we have the wide receiver one in Lamb. We have Wilson, Diggs. The depth here actually matters a lot. These guys like Worthy, Leggett, we can look to get in, of course, specifically with these league settings. So the last thing I want to do is be selling some of the wide receiver depth pieces that you have in a league like this. And if you're in the chat, if you don't have a team review voucher yet and use promo code FLOCK and made a $10 deposit a couple days ago, please email me, mason.at-flockfantasy.com. But anyway, looking at this, I want to hold on to the wide receiver depth pieces in your league settings. I think something that would be advantageous for us is if we end up getting a big spike week from Tucker Kraft again, where if you wanted to potentially go through and look to maybe move like Tucker Kraft and Leggett to go get a wide receiver upgrade and get to a wide receiver that you think could be a top 24 option rest of season. I think that could make some sense here. Just given the fact that, again, with these league settings, tight end's going to make up a smaller percentage of our starting lineup output weekly, and we are a little bit more incentivized to have the top end receivers, if possible, specifically in our flex spots. So I think it's a great team. I think that there's very little that we can look to do here. Again, the onesie positions don't matter as much. Our RB2 doesn't matter as much either in this league. So really the only real actionable thing I can say at this point is if you could move David Montgomery for an absolute haul and get an elite receiver, I think I would look to do that. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out. But I really love your league settings, by the way. I think most people should play in leagues that are a little bit deeper like that. Kingman coming out. This is trading away Chris Godwin for Tyreek Hill. I would rather have Tyreek Hill straight up over Godwin. If you have Godwin right now, I don't think it'd be the worst idea to trade for Tyreek. Obviously, you have to deal with one more week with no Tua, but also you get an extra game played anyway from Tyreek Hill with him already through his bye. And obviously, if we get Tua back next week, Tyreek will be well ahead of Godwin in my ranks. So yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go with Tyreek and Metcalf. Now, let me refresh this, see if we have any more questions. Flea Nice coming out with our next. This is a 10-team app PPR where we need 2 wide receivers and a flex between Mooney, Amari, Watson, and Worthy. I'm going to be going with Mooney for damn sure with how good his offense should be. We're going to be going with Amari. I'm hesitant to do so because I think that there is an outside chance that you actually are stuck with a low snap count Amari's first week in. Wouldn't be surprised if he only plays 30% of the snaps here. And then for the last spot, I am going to be going with Xavier Worthy. I think Worthy is a little bit more of a boom bust option, but I think you can say the same thing as well with Christian Watson, where you don't have the consistent target volume with Watson. Now, Brandon coming out with a massive team review. Really appreciate you. Let me go ahead and hook you up with a free trade question and a free start sit question here as well. So if you have any additional questions about this team or maybe another one, you can ask it for me on the site for free. But you should have a voucher for both of those. But we need to upgrade our wide receiver position. What should we do? So this is a 14-team format. Team name is Big Dixon Mixon. So wide receiver depth is not the most important thing in the world because it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, but depth in general is going to be important and it will be harder to come by with fewer options on the waiver wire for us. But anyway, going ahead and pulling this up. Starting off at quarterback, we are currently rolling with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, if we are looking at Hurts here, He's a quarterback that we can start every single week, regardless of the matchup. And at the same time, he's already through his bye week as well. So I think that you're in a situation in which you could let go of Bo Nix. Now, obviously, 14-team league. If everybody's rostering 2 to 3 quarterbacks, then you're just absolutely screwed if Jalen Hurts goes down. But let me see the options on waivers. You have Will Levis, Deshaun Watson. So you know what? Yeah, we can hold on to Bo Nix. I'm surprised to see that Trey Benson is on the waiver wire here, though. As going over to running back, obviously we are in a phenomenal spot. We're number 1 in the league analyzer, and we're 4-2 for a reason in this league. We have Barkley and Joe Mixon, both of whom project out to be RB1s even in a 10-team format rest of season. But in a 14-team league, they're even more exciting. We have Algier Keaton Mitchell down at the very bottom end of this roster. I would love to add in another running back depth piece, particularly somebody that's possibly an injury away from having a massive ceiling. I think you can make an argument that Trey Benson does that. I think Benson could potentially expand his role as the year goes on. While at the same time, if you are looking at Trey Benson here, this is a running back in which if James Conner were to go down, he just absolutely crushes. So I would drop Greg Dortch and I'd pick up Benson, especially now that Marvin Harrison Jr. should be good to go in Arizona. And then, yeah, running back, we're great. Wide receiver, we have T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, both of whom I probably don't put as top 14 receivers, but definitely top 28 guys. So we have effectively 2 wide receiver 2s here in this league. I think Jordan Addison's a very effective wide receiver 3 in a 14-team league. Looking at Jalen Tolbert, Cortland Sutton, they're kind of whatever. Best options on the waiver wire like Troy Franklin at receiver, so we probably leave these guys at the bottom end. The clear trade, if you are going to make one, is going through and trading away Jake Ferguson with a wide receiver to go try to get a wide receiver upgrade. This team here, actually maybe is this a league where you don't have to start a tight ends? This is a league where I don't think you have to start a tight end. Please, Brandon, can you confirm in the chat? But never mind, you're screwed. And obviously, when I say you're screwed, I'm half the way joking, but more so I'm screwed because the only advice that I had to give you, I can no longer give. As I thought the clear play was, let's trade Jake Ferguson and a wide receiver to go get a wide receiver upgrade. And I'm sure we could find a team that needs a tight end to give them Ferguson. But ultimately, if there's not a team in this league that needs a tight end because you don't need it to start a tight ends, nobody's going to be here looking to trade for Jake Ferguson. So, again, I think we cut Greg Dortch, and I think we pick up Trey Benson. Yeah, Brandon says no tight end. Yeah, I don't think you can make that trade then at that point. We cut Dortch, we pick up Benson. Obviously, we're not extremely strong at the top end at wide receiver, but specifically with this being a 14-team format, I think you're going to be able to get away with it anyway. So I think you probably keep this team as is in terms of trades. I don't see a path for us to reasonably get to a top end receiver here. I think Higgins and Deontay are going to be just fine for you. Maybe if you could find somebody to make that deal with you where you trade away Kelsey or Ferguson in a 2-for-1 deal with one of the receivers, we would do it. But just much easier said than done, and probably we just can't do it with this being a league where you don't have to start a tight end. I wish I had more for you here. Like I said, I did send you over the free trade question and the free start sit question vouchers as well. So if you have any specific questions about the team, I'd be really happy to go through and answer those for you too. But again, thank you. Really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. But Flea Nice says, I forgot to mention that we also have Diggs. Okay, so going back to this, you go Diggs and Mooney at wide receiver. And then for your flex, we're going to go with Amari over Watson and Worthy. But we're not going to be super confident with the Amari call. But yeah, obviously you start Diggs as well as Mooney. And that's going to be a no-brainer there. Now, CAD Football coming out with a start set. Here, we really need 3 running backs. We're going to go Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard in that order. Wide receiver, we go with Chase, Tyreek, Watson in that order. Flex, we go Bucky, then Douglas in that order. I'm sorry, we can't do it. We got to go Sermon. And then at tight ends, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play Njoku. But if you don't need to play, if you only play 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 1 flex, then you start Chase, Tyreek, Henry, Walker, and then you throw Pollard into the flex spot. But let me refresh this and see if we have any more. Flea Nice says, 10-team at PPR need 2 TB and 1 flex. I'm assuming running back. Brian Robinson, Jordan Mason, Eckler, Ray Davis, Sean Tucker, Pickens, Bucky Irving. Brian Robinson, Jordan Mason are the absolute must-start running backs in this. Really, the question is, at flex, are we going to go with Eckler, Davis, Tucker, Pickens, Bucky? I think we go with Pickens unless you get Rachaad White ruled out. And if Rachaad White's ruled out, then at that point, the Tampa backfield goes from being a 3-man running back by committee to a 2-man running back by committee. And we can go ahead and we can start Pickens. But we can go Bucky if White's out. But if White plays, we go Pickens. But I think we were able to get through all the questions on the site. Definitely want to reiterate, of course, I'm going to be waking up in about 6 hours so we can go through and we can answer all your questions before the Sunday morning games as well. Plus, I'm going to be having a watch party for the Jags-Patriots game. So if you are maybe going to watch the game by yourself, I'd recommend swinging through the live stream. We can react to the game in the live chat together. And of course, if you wanted to get in any of your questions, you'd always go over to flogfantasy.com. You can always hit the button in the top right corner that says expert advice. You could send in a super message, start sit question, trade question, team review, whenever you want, even if you're not going to be in the live stream. If you send in a question, you'll be the first person at the top. We'll answer it in the stream. And the second that I answer it to you, the second that I answer your question, it's going to be automatically sent to you through flockfantasy.com with a custom link that takes you to the exact time that I answered your question. So you can ask a question at any time, even if you're not going to come out to the live stream. Again, if you wanted that team review, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the Underdog offer that we have, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tomorrow night. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single day as well. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. That way we're able to go through and hook you up with that free team review voucher. But thank you again. I'm going to try my absolute best to go to sleep, and we'll cry myself to sleep with the Texas loss. But I'm going to try to go to bed so I can get up early in the morning. But much love. Really do appreciate you. And if I'm not able to see you in the morning, it'll be just a little disappointing, but I'm wishing you the best of luck in week 7, of course.